This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone to the Wednesday, May 18th, 2022 meeting of the Gloucester Conservation Commission. The time is 6:04 p.m. Consistent with Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. Persons who wish to do so are invited to view the meeting at the link provided on the City of Gloucester Remote Meetings website under Conservation Commission, May 18, 2022, or join by phone using any one of the phone numbers provided on the meeting notice and agenda and webinar ID 847-7626-1619. In the event that a live transmission proves unworkable for any reason, an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of the meeting will be made available on the city's website as soon as possible. I did have one request to continue to June 1st, come in this afternoon. That was for NOI 0282836 51 Forest Street, which is the Haskell Pond Dam project in the city of Gloucester. Otherwise, I will do a roll call for commissioners. Commissioner Gullah is not here tonight. So Commissioner Charpentier.
Here.
Commissioner Cook.
Here.
Commissioner Gradwall is here. I see you. Commissioner Sargent.
Here.
Commissioner Sherman is also muted, but I see you as well. And Co-Chairwoman Jackson.
Here.
Thank you.
Now I'm unmuted.
Okay.
Okie doke. So over to you, Ann Jo.
Okay. Welcome to the May 18th meeting of the Gloucester Conservation Commission. Our opening agenda item is the administrative briefing. Adrian?
Thank you. Back to me. Thank you. Commissioners, I want, and the public who is viewing, I want to share with you the Gloucester Open Space and Recreation Plan 2022 update is available now for public review in draft form. The public comment period is open until June 2nd. This is a very large and important document that is intended to do a complete inventory and evaluation of Gloucester's open space, natural resources, and public lands, and set forth objectives for the city to aim to complete over the next 10 years in that interest of conservation and environmental management. You can view the plan. It is about 300 pages long. About half of it is the inventory of public lands. So there is around 150 pages of text. And then appendices, which are many, many maps and slide presentations from our forum over the process and all kinds of other supplemental information is available for review and public comment. You can access that by going to the Open Space and Recreation Committee webpage on the City of Gloucester website. There are links right at the very top for the draft 22 Open Space and Recreation Plan, the appendices. And then if you would like to submit public comment, there is a 2022 Open Space and Recreation Plan public comment matrix to use that should be sent back to conservation@gloucester-ma.gov to be included for the Open Space and Recreation Committee to review before their next meeting on June 8th, when they'll incorporate public comments, review them, and make additional revisions to the draft plan. There are a couple of things that remain to be done on the plan, but by and large, it is very close to completion, certainly complete enough for the public to view and for submission to Planning Board, the Mayor's Office, the Metro Area Planning Commission, all of whom need to comment on the plan, and the Division of Conservation Services at the Commonwealth. So I'm very excited to see it come together. It's looking really good, and the final product is very much within reach. So take a moment and look it over when you have a chance.
Okay, I'm sorry. Next up, we have public comment. This is the opportunity for anyone in the audience who wishes to comment on conservation issues which are not on the agenda. Is anybody in the audience wanting to do that?
Okay. Chairwoman Jackson, there are 15 panelists on the call. There are 48 attendees and no hands up at this time, no members of the public to comment.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on, we have the minutes review and approval for the May 4th, 2022 minutes. Were those submitted on the website, Adrian?
I believe they should be. Yep.
Oh, okay, I missed them.
I
So,
didn't see them either.
Oh, you didn't? Okay. I can check with Deb.
okay. Did anyone else see them? Is there anyone who did read them?
I did not.
I did not see them.
Okay.
Okay, then
I'll
I
check
think
with-
we will table those until the next meeting. Okay. Moving on to continued business. First up, we have RDA 1703, Salt Island by Salt Island LLC, represented by Evan Govendran at DeRosa Environmental Consulting. Evan, I know you're here.
Yes, hello everyone. This is Evan Govendran of DeRosa Environmental, here representing the Martignettes for their proposed vegetation management plan on Salt Island. Also here is Mike DeRosa of DeRosa Environmental and JP Martignetti, the owner. We're here to continue the discussion of the project and request a negative determination of applicability. Adrian, do you want me to share screen?
Nope. I have it right here for you. There you go.
Excellent. Do you have the other figure perhaps?
Sure.
Okay.
This one?
Yeah, that one. Yep, thank you.
Mhm.
So actually, to give a brief recap of the project, the RDA was first submitted in June of 2021 for the use of grazing animals for vegetation management on Salt Island. Since then, we've been retained to provide the commission with supplemental information. We have conducted several site visits and we've done an inventory of the existing vegetation, and I've also had multiple conversations with Goats to Go. They're the company that will be supplying the goats. And we talked about means and methods for having the goats out there. So first and foremost, Goats to Go is not concerned really at all with bringing the goats out to the island. Goats are afraid of water, so there's no fear for them of them escaping off the island. So the plan is here. So they did recommend a trial area be set up, and that's represented by Area A on the plan here. The trial area is just kind of to make sure that the goats are actually eating, that they're staying in their secured area, and that they're having the desired effect on the vegetation community present on the island. So what we're going to do is install a temporary wire electric fencing around this trial area here. And that'll keep the goats in there, as well as leaving the rest of the island open for public to access if they want to. The goats will be brought in by boat, and Goats to Go has confirmed that they can travel by boat. And also brought in by boat will be water, hay to supplement their diet, and also a temporary shelter for shade, just to get them out of the heat. So all of that will be brought in by boat to avoid transporting over that island that's designated as priority habitat. Goats to Go said that the best time to bring the goats out there would be June, and they would stay out there as long as needed or until the weather turns. The goats will be visited weekly to ensuring that they're remaining within the enclosure, have adequate water and hay, and are doing or actually eating the vegetation. And that'll all happen in this trial area. And if it serves, if it's showing that it's actually working, we'll then move them to this area B. Once they're moved to area B, the trial area A will be seeded with native grasses and perennials. There's a list down here at the bottom of this plan. Yep, and then we'll hay mulch it for stability. After the goats have done what they needed to do in B, then we move them to C. So at no time will public not be able to access the island, and the goats will remain in their designated areas while they're eating. So that's a brief update on where we are right now. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer.
Thank you. I have lots of questions.
I'm sure.
But first, we're going to open it up for public comment, and then we'll go through commissioner comments, and then we'll kind of flesh it out from there. I'm going to open this up for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to comment on the project on Salt Island, RDA 1703?
Sure. So, Madam Chairman, there are 16 panelists on the call, 52 attendees. Kim Smith, I saw your hand go up first, so I will allow you to talk and ask you to unmute. Go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
I have questions. I don't know if this is this a commenting time, or can you ask questions at this time?
You can ask questions, and the applicant will take down those questions and then respond to them in one group after hearing all of the comments.
Okay. So my chief concern is the goat manure. It's my understanding that they'll only be checking on the goats once a week, and most farms and communities manage their manure on a daily basis. So a goat creates about 1/10 as less manure as a horse does, a 1/10 of a point. So that's a tremendous amount of manure that's going to be going into the surrounding water and affecting the vegetation there, as well as the shellfish there. So that's my chief concern. Where will the manure be stored? What will happen? How will the goat urine affect the habitat there? Let's see, what will we do about the coyotes that will make their way over there when the tide is low? I don't understand why the goats are only going to be attended to once a week. That almost seems inhumane to me. Let's see. I think I had one more question, and I have a comment about the plant list. If you're going to plant, if this is going to go through and you're going to be planting native plants, you definitely want to plant seaside goldenrod, Solidago sempervirens, not Solidago speciosa. The Solidago sempervirens is the seaside goldenrod that we see everywhere throughout the dunes and all over our community, and that's the one that will really help shore up the habitat there. So just a thought on that. If this all goes through, or if they don't get rid of the invasive species through the goats, if there's some other way they can get rid of the invasive species, seaside goldenrod, especially black-eyed Susan. We don't see black-eyed Susan last more than a year or so in this area. It doesn't typically come back. So those are my comments, but mostly about the manure.
Okay, thank you very much. Adrian, do we have someone else?
There are 2 additional commenters. Jane Knott, I'm going to allow you to talk and ask you to unmute. Go ahead.
Hello, Adrian and commissioners. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so my name is Jane Knott. I'm a resident of Gloucester and have enjoyed Salt Island for my entire life. I have a PhD in environmental engineering and coastal resources coastal resources have been an important part of my work. While at MIT and Woods Hole Oceanographic, I conducted wetlands research along the north and south shores of Massachusetts. With respect to Salt Island, I'm a part of a rapidly growing group of over 450 citizens who operate under the name of Save Salt Island. Many of these people are here tonight, and we are all opposed to the activities described in RDA 1703, namely the installation of 38 fence posts and cutting of vegetation that were done without a permit last summer, and the proposed continued removal of Salt Island's vegetation using goats or by other means. We submitted a statement of concerns to the Conservation Commission 9 months ago, and I'll briefly summarize it here. Number one, we respectfully submit that the Conservation Commission must find that the proposed work falls under the jurisdiction of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Gloucester Wetlands Ordinance. The fence installation and the vegetation destruction is proposed to occur not in the buffer zone or the upland edge as stated in the application, but within the coastal bank, a protected resource area of both the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Gloucester Wetlands Ordinance. In fact, more than 80% of Salt Island is coastal bank because of its steep edges, as defined as by the Massachusetts Coastal Zone Management Guidance. Number two, both the Wetlands Protection Act and the Gloucester Wetlands Ordinance were established to control activities deemed to have a significant effect, either individually or cumulatively, upon the following 6 interests. Number one, prevention of erosion and sedimentation, where erosion and sedimentation will have a detrimental effect upon the wetland interests. Removal of Salt Island's vegetations will result in the erosion of soils and will cause sediment deposition in the intertidal zone. If the growth that the seeds that they plant do not take and the small vegetation doesn't grow, and we have a heavy rain, there's a good chance that the soil, which is thin to begin with, could wash out and we could have a rock instead of a vegetated island. Number two, protection of fisheries. The resulting sedimentation will harm the spawning, settlement, and early juvenile development of commercially important fish. Number three, protection of land containing shellfish. Good Harbor Beach and the sandbar connecting Salt Island are designated growing areas for sea, surf, and hen clams, and as such must be protected from alteration of any kind, including pollution. Number four, prevention of pollution, that's already been mentioned. Runoff from an unvegetated Salt Island and or a herd of goats will damage the water quality of Good Harbor Beach and the waters in the cove between Salt Island and the mainland. Number five, protection of wetland habitat. Salt Island is designated as an important bird area, and it is important to fisheries. Removal of shrubs and replacement with grasses will change this island habitat. Storm damage prevention. Salt Island in its natural state protects the beach and mainland from storm damage and erosion, the threats of which are getting worse with sea level rise. For these reasons, we respectfully submit that the Conservation Commission must fully protect the resource areas, including the coastal bank, intertidal zone, wetlands, beach, and areas of coastal storm flowage, and the public interests associated with the Salt Island ecosystem. The Commission must also require that the applicant remove the fence posts and the threaded rods improperly drilled into the coastal bank. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Adrian, someone else?
Yes, Bruce Bemis, I see your hand up. I'm going to allow you to talk and ask you to unmute. Go ahead.
Yes, hello. My name is Bruce Bemis. I live on Salt Island Road, directly across from Salt Island, and my property includes an area of private beach. I share the many concerns voiced today, as well as in the past year, but I would like to focus my comments on the issue of containment and noise. I have several concerns about goats being installed on Salt Island due to the fact that the island is in close proximity to the densely settled neighborhood of Briar Neck. The fact that Salt Island is accessible to the beach and subsequently to Briar Neck neighborhood presents the likelihood that goats on the island will be accidentally or intentionally released from the proposed enclosure and wander at large. There are real concerns that the goats will not be contained on the island alone and via the sandbar at low tide will wander onto the beaches and neighboring properties. Such an event would be an imposition and disruption to residents who are neighbors of Salt Island. Wandering goats present a high risk of potential damage to the properties abutting the island, not to mention potential harm to the goats themselves. Goats exposed on the island will also present a noise element that will be disruptive to the community. This is especially true if goats are under stress for a variety of reasons, such as being injured or, as can happen, entangled in fencing. Goats can produce loud cries if stressed. As long-term residents can tell you, noise can be amplified in the open beach environment and could last for some time if access to the island is restricted by tides or weather. The plan to check on the goats only once a week is clearly insufficient to respond to the currently unpredictable circumstances and needs of the goats in real time as they arise. The impact of this will be borne entirely by the neighboring residents and beach-going community, and not by the owners who are leaving the goats unattended on the island. I am extremely troubled by the fact that these and other concerns that were put forth at the initial presentation of the project a year ago have not been addressed or even mentioned in the supplementary information presented today. I have little confidence that the community concerns will be responded to if the project is allowed to proceed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Adrian, is there anyone else?
Yes. Warren Smith, I see your hand up. I will allow you to talk and ask you to unmute. Go ahead.
Hi, Warren Smith. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm a Briar Neck resident for 70 years. And just a couple comments. Evan, can you explain the temporary shelter? What do you mean by that?
Right now, she's just gathering the comments, Warren,
Oh,
and
we
she
could
will
get an
address them all at once.
okay, Andrew, if we could get an explanation of what that really means.
Sure.
You know, we've all witnessed the beauty of Salt Island. We've seen pictures of the Parsons Shacks, lobster shacks built. There was a movie, Bride Number 13. None of us have seen that because it's no longer available. But the result is the island was blown up, or the castle was blown up. So I just sort of wonder, where is this all going? We've got goats. We've got, are we having buildings? So if there's some explanations of where is this project going would be very helpful.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, is there anyone else?
Yes. Diane Cohen, I will allow you to talk and ask you to unmute. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Diane Cowan. I have a PhD as a marine ecologist, and I am just struck by the irony of this project, and I feel like I need to speak for the Gulf of Maine. The problem, the real big problem here is goats. In this time of COVID, I can't even fathom how you can consider having goats left alone on an island. Goats carry diseases that can infect other mammals, including humans. The harm that can be done by introducing this species, and the irony of introducing this species to an island in order to combat other introduced species that do no harm to anyone and were brought to the island by people, and now you're bringing another. It's just beyond me to even start to think of allowing this project. And the question of the waste, goat waste, will have a negative impact on the freshwater habitat of that island, and it will have a negative impact to seawater quality. And there is no way for you to avoid that or prevent that. How can you do this? Goats are capable of harming wildlife and domestic animals. Domestic animals go to that island, and there's wildlife on that island. And it's just no place to introduce a pest species. Goats are capable and do kill humans every year. You can look up the numbers and it happens. And goats do know how to swim. They may not have that as their preferred locomotion, but they can and will swim great distances. So this is just absolutely beyond belief that the Conservation Commission can even be entertaining this possibility. I completely am baffled. Thank you for hearing me. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Adrian, is there anyone else that wishes to speak?
I saw Chris. There you are, Chris Leahy. I will allow you to talk and ask you to unmute. Go ahead.
Okay, there we go. So my name is Chris Leahy. I live at 67 Perkins Street here in Gloucester. Just for the record, for 30 or more years, I was Director of Conservation at the Mass Audubon Society. Part of my responsibility was the oversight of the ecological management of more than 30,000 acres of wildlife sanctuaries, including virtually all the habitats that occur in Massachusetts. I've also, spent a lot of time in the field in Gloucester and have been to Salt Island many times. I've never done a thorough ecological survey, but I do note species that I've seen there, which will include a good many of them. I'm not going to use my time to reiterate what the previous speakers have said, but I want to heartily endorse what they've all said in terms of concerns about the goat droppings in concert with erosion. Goats are, and I've had experience with browsing animals for ecological management done properly, and goats are indiscriminate browsers. They eat everything, and they eat it right down to the ground level. So erosion and of course droppings are both inevitable. With a precipitation event, it doesn't take much imagination to see about the pollution. I was glad to see someone mention that there are at least 2 freshwater wetlands on the island, which would also be vulnerable to pollution in that regard. One of the things that puzzles me is why this relatively sort of draconian, time-consuming, environmentally questionable use of goats has been chosen. If the goal is, and there's mention of trying to protect certain native shrubs and things, if the goal is to get rid of invasive plants and leave the good stuff, rather than wipe everything out and start from scratch with, frankly, some dubious species, why not do the whole thing manually? It won't take, that happens many places. It will take much less time. The goats, as I read it, are going to be out there for years going through all these different phases. And it will be much more ecologically sound in terms of protecting what needs to be protected and the opposite. the words invasive and nuisance are used together to describe the majority of implied undesirable plants. However, we need to be clear about this. Common greenbrier, which if you have it in your yard, I can understand is a pain, but it's a native species. It's extensively used by resident and migratory birds for both food and cover, and as such is a valuable component of the island habitat. So the idea that this is a problem plant, the greenbrier, also known as catbrier, Smilex rotundifolia, is a problem, is a non-issue. Let's see. Yeah, that's most of what there's mention in the supplement about protection of wildlife, and all this is in the aid of protection of wildlife. Yet nowhere are mentioned any wildlife aside from the plants. Nothing mentioned about birds. There are a number of resident birds and many migratory birds use the island. No mention of the many invertebrates there, various insects, dragonflies, butterflies, things of that kind, or anything else. So it's a little disturbing to think that wildlife, although mentioned, has not been specifically pulled out. I think I will stop there. One of the I have some concerns about the specific plants that have been chosen as replacements. I think Kim Smith mentioned, some of them are not the best examples of Cape Ann plant life. If we have to go in that direction of kind of scouring the whole place and then planting new stuff, which I certainly would hope we don't. Finally, just a question that can be answered. Nowhere, we're talking goats. How many goats? It's nowhere mentioned how many goats are going to be boated out to the island in order to perform this miracle. So it would be interesting to know what the plan is in terms of number of goats. Thank you. That's all I'll have to say.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else, Adrienne?
All right, Madam Chair, there are 17 panelists. There are 63 attendees on the call. And at this time, I see no additional hands.
Okay, then I will close the public hearing for Salt Island, and we will continue on to, normally we answer the audience questions, but I think you're going to hear some of these same concerns from the commissioners as well. So I would suggest that we go through commissioner comments for you, Erin, and then let you kind of respond.
Sure, that sounds okay.
Okay, why don't we go through commissioner comments, Adrienne?
Sure. Commissioner comments. Commissioner Charpentier.
After the excellent presentations from Doctors Knox and Cowan and Mr. Leahy, I have no additional comments.
Okay. Commissioner Cook.
Okay, I agree with all the previous comments I brought up, even based on Goats to Go's website. Goats will eat down to the root and denude the entire area. What I'm about to say is, I'm not even sure if it's correct, but I am going to strongly suggest that the applicant request a withdrawal without prejudice, because using goats in this area is a no-go. They need to remove everything that they've done and allow the island to revegetate to the point that it was before they went out there and started using chainsaws and crews to pull and remove stuff beforehand. There is absolutely nothing that this applicant can do to convince me to move forward on this, and using goats as a non-starter to begin with. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Gradwell.
I think that everything that I could possibly bring up has been brought up, and we'll just wait for some good answers, including why not use a hand pull.
Okay. Commissioner Sargent.
Yeah, the coastal bank, which is a resource area, isn't delineated on the plan. And it appears that these proposed activities are in that resource area and not in a buffer zone. Then the exception for the grazing of animals and installation of fences is not valid because the applicant has not provided sufficient information that the shallow overburden of soil on Salt Island would not be eroded by this proposed activity, I believe there should be a NOI, the detailed vegetation management plan, if the applicant wishes to proceed. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Sherman. You are muted.
I'm sure Chris Leahy knows this better than me, but and perhaps other people do as well. But I'm concerned about the bird species that are nesting on the island currently. Are there double-crested cormorants nesting out there, or other birds that nest on or near the ground? And if so, it seems like this would be this current proposal would have a negative effect on these nesting birds, and these birds are protected under the Migratory Bird Species Act. And so that is my comment.
Thank you. And Chairwoman Jackson.
Thank you. I am probably actually the most affected by this project, Salt Island being at one end of the sandbar and my house at the other. But I was intrigued by this. I was prepared to agree with the concept given sufficient information, many issues of which we had discussed in the initial meeting a year ago, or almost a year ago. But I have a lot of questions right now. I would agree with Mr. Sargent that we need more information and probably a notice of intent. Let me just go through my questions. And these aren't necessarily in any order of priority. Does the shelter that is being constructed, I don't know what kind of a shelter that is. Does it require building department approval? We need more information on that. The electric fencing, what if somebody touches that? How much of a shock is there? Will there be warning signs? How will people be protected from that? I echo how many goats for at least an estimate of how long. Certainly Goats to Go knows how much vegetation they can consume and cover, how much area. The replanting plan, we need to know how much vegetation is being removed, how much is being replanted, hopefully at least 1-to-1. How many plants will be involved, and the area coverage. Greenbrier, pros and cons to the Greenbrier. You said that goats won't eat it. Somebody else said that goats eat everything. Greenbrier is classified as an invasive, but it also does provide the habitat and the shelter for the birds. Is anything being done with it? And if so, what? It's my understanding that goats do not pull up the plants by the roots unless they're starving, but I would like some substantiation of that. Board of Health, I think, is supposed to approve sanitation for grazing animals. The animal waste is a big one for me. I'm also on Shellfish Commission, and these are active clam flats, which have just been reapproved after many, many years of closure. I would hate to see them closed again. That the waste needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed in detail. I am also concerned about the just once a week. If all that information could come in and provide satisfactorily, I would be looking at this with even more favor than I initially was thinking about it. But all of those questions have to be addressed and in detail, which is, I think, too much for a request for determination. I was hoping that information would come in with this.
Okay.
Turning it back to you, Evan. And one moment, Adrian, your comments, do you have anything to add to the aforementioned ones?
I will tell you one thing. If the commission should decide to find a positive determination here, and the applicant must return back to the drawing board and think of new and different ways, they must also remove all of the posts and pins and existing structures or activities that have been in place on the island for the past year. That's all.
Is there an alternative way to address this? If this looks like a possible project, is there an alternative way to address this that would not necessarily require that?
The removal of the posts.
Well, yeah,
If the commission is not able to find a negative determination for the activities proposed and that it intends to include the existing posts, then the posts must come out. They will be subject to enforcement.
okay. I'm not seeing that we can get a negative determination on this.
I think we can let Evan answer. I just want to be sure everybody understands there is some scope of work here that will need to be rectified. And I think that's fine.
Okay,
And they can come return with a notice of intent application if, as and when they're prepared to do that for vegetation.
Adrian, if they were to withdraw without prejudice, could the requirement be that the posts be removed at that time?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I mean, what we're saying here is that we're not able to find a negative determination for any of the activities proposed, and that includes what exists there now.
Okay.
Madam Chair, this is Mike DeRosa.
Oh, geez.
Okay, Mr. Rosa, go ahead.
So we appreciate, first of all, everybody's comments, thoughtful comments. We unfortunately did not receive a copy of Dr. Knott's statement of concerns and the community statement of concerns. So we were not privy to that information. And we've, Evan and I have both taken copious notes here tonight from all the commenters, some of which we know and highly respect their opinions. So we thank you for all the thoughtful review. I think what we would like to do is revisit this with our client and continue this till the second meeting in June. And we will come back with some decision on strategy, whether we pursue the goats to go strategy or whether we come up with an alternative whole plant removal strategy or some other way to deal with the plant material out there. The primary concern is the poison ivy that is out there. That's really what we're trying to target. So if the commission is willing to allow us a continuance to the second meeting in June, we will come back with a decision and a strategy to go forward, which may turn out to be removing or withdrawing the RDA and coming in with an NOI. We will discuss that as well. But we appreciate all the comments. We'll take them under advisement and look at this in more detail.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. DeRosa. I think that's a very good route to follow right now. Okay, then if there's no further discussion, I will entertain a motion to continue RDA 1703 to the meeting of June 7/15. Would that be right, Adrian?
That is correct.
Charpentier moves to continue RDA 1703 Salt Island to the commission meeting of June 15th.
And Gradwell seconds.
The roll call, Commissioner Charpentier,
Yes.
Commissioner Cook,
Yes.
Commissioner Gradwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Sargent,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman. You are muted, sir.
Abstain.
And Chairwoman Jackson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
all.
Evan.
Have a good night.
Adrian, we will miss you.
Oh, you will see me around, I'm sure.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Mike.
Good night. Okay, next up, we have NOI 028-2827, 105 Wingersheek, lots A and B. Owned by 125 Wingersheek LLC, represented by Joel Favaza of Seaside Legal Solutions LLC.
Good evening. For the record, Joel Favaza, Seaside Legal Solutions, 123 Main Street in Gloucester, here on behalf of 125 Wingersheek LLC. At our last meeting, I had proposed to the commission that a letter provided by Mike Seecamp be considered as a replacement for the third-party review, which has not yet happened. Again, this stems from commissioner concerns primarily relating to isolated wetlands down by the road to see whether they were hydrologically connected to a larger wetland system on the other side of the road. There was also some question about the impact of a second driveway being proposed. And basically, to get a handle on it ourselves, we went and had a third party kind of informal review done for us by Mike Seecamp. And anyway, at the last meeting, I suggested that might be an alternative. The commission hadn't had a chance at that time to actually vet that letter. And so we decided we'd come back in 2 weeks and see what the will of the commission was, whether they thought Mike Seecamp's February letter was acceptable and gave the commission sufficient comfort to move forward, or if the commission still felt like we needed to go get yet another set of eyes on the delineation and proposal. And so I am here to complete that part of the discussion, and we'll kind of go whichever way we decide to go from there.
Okay, thank you. I will open this up for public comment first. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to comment on NOI 028-2827 at 105 Wingersheek Road, lots A and B?
Madam Chairman, there are 15 panelists on the call, 41 attendees, and I see no members of the public to comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. I'll close the public comment period.
Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. There is a hand up. Joan
Okay.
Archer. I'm going to allow you to talk and ask you to unmute. Go ahead.
Thank you. I guess I would like to just raise the issue of the third party looking at, it was my understanding they had made some comment about moving the homes back further onto the land towards the road to protect the fragile frontal dunes. And I'm just wondering if that is still being considered.
Okay, thank you. We will answer that as we get back to the hearing. So.
Okay.
Is there anyone else?
Madam Chairman, I do not see any other hands at this time. Thank you.
Okay, then we'll close the public comment period. And before we go on to commissioner comments, Adrian, did you want to make a comment about the finding of a peer reviewer? Or?
Sure. So where we left this with the commission, and I think you recall what we talked a little bit about this at the last hearing. When we first reviewed this project, we were interested in the location of the primary frontal dune and the status of the area between what is identified here as the location of primary frontal dune and the coastal dune, what is mapped as coastal dune, and then also these isolated vegetated wetlands at the base of the parcels and across the street, the bordering vegetated wetland. So the boundary of the buffer zone to this at a minimum, this bordering vegetated wetland, whether or not in fact this is also bordering vegetated wetland and therefore having a buffer zone to consider the identification of this entire parcel as coastal dune and the location of primary frontal dune. So there were approximations on the initial plan, and for the commission's sake, we agreed to go to third-party review. I did interview and try to connect with 3 or 4 different reviewers who have some experience doing coastal work in Massachusetts. I actually had a couple who did not even call me back on this issue because of its location on Wingersheek Beach. One reviewer is prepared to make a review and produce a third-party document for the commission. However, they did communicate to me that because this is primary frontal dune and coastal dune, new construction on the coastal dune would be very difficult to confirm as arising to the performance standards. So typically what we see out here at Wingersheek is a redevelopment. It's a redevelopment of a septic system, utilities, and home. In this case, we are tearing down the existing dwelling. There is a subdivision on the property. There will be 2 septic systems, 2 driveways, 2 utility installations, and 2 homes. So that is what I submitted to the applicant. I encourage the applicant to move forward with the 2-lot subdivision because it would be a little bit easier at a minimum to try and take them separately as 2 different projects. The applicant went forward and instead got a review or additional information from Seacamp Environmental, which has been provided to you. However, of course, it affirms their initial representation that you're looking at now. It's not actually a change at all in what our understanding of the property and the parcel and the resource areas and their interests are to the act and the ordinance from what we were hoping to answer in the first place with the third party. So that's for you all to consider and take as you will.
Okay, let's move forward with commissioner comments.
Commissioner comments. Commissioner Charpentier.
Not at this time.
Commissioner Cook. If you are on.
No, I have no problems with the project as it's proposed.
Okay. Commissioner Gradwell.
No comment at this time.
Commissioner Sargent.
I would prefer the third-party review because of the coastal dunes, and I'm a little concerned about Mike Seacamp's saying that these isolated lands subject to flooding. The 8-foot contour is how he defines that. I think that's favorable to the applicant, and I would worry about them being impacted by all of the construction that's supposed to be taking place. And I think that needs to be further defined. And I think that's best done through a third-party review.
Okay. Commissioner Sherman.
I too would like to see a third-party review. I do not believe the Seacamp letter is sufficient.
And Chairwoman Jackson.
I also agree with the third-party review. I think DEP is very clear that there is no new construction in primary dunes, and this has to qualify as new construction, with primary dunes being significant to storm damage and flood control. So I am not willing to make a decision on this project as it stands.
Okay.
Okay. Did you have any further comments, Adrian?
No.
Mr. Favazza, would you like to respond?
Yeah, thank you so much. So to the question posed by the neighbor, I want to just respond that yes, both the proposed houses as shown are further back from the primary dune than the existing house and further back than a house that has about 4,200 square feet more disruption that you've already permitted on this site. The large house you previously permitted on the site without third-party review, I mind you, is level with the existing home. And that's building permit ready right now. We're trying to go to 2 smaller homes further back from the dune. And so to the neighbor's question, yes, if we're able to build these 2 smaller houses, we will be further back from the primary dune than the existing house. If you're not able to build these 2 smaller houses, then no, the much larger house is going to be built right up to the line where the existing house is. And then also for the commission's edification, John Judd, who prepared the plan, is on the call tonight, and Mike Seacamp, who wrote that letter, is on the call. So if, for example, there are any questions about the 8-foot contour determination or about the the primary dune delineation that would enable this commission to move forward, he can probably answer those questions for you versus us going back out. But again, it's the commission's will. If you say we need a third party, we need a third party, but he is here tonight and could potentially quickly answer those questions you may have after reading his letter.
Okay. Go ahead.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Does Mr. Judd wish to speak?
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm here to answer any questions specific questions that the members may have, but I think the plan stands for itself. I do agree with Joel in that there was a substantially larger structure, as you may recall, that was previously approved and for this property, and this provides a net decrease in impervious area overall from what was previously approved. That's all I can really comment on at this time. Thank you.
And I can't disagree with those comments, other than the fact that the previous project is not on the table tonight. We are looking at a project with 2 lots and 2 separate homes. The previous project has nothing to do with this. Mr. Seecamp, did you wish to comment?
I do not see Mr. Seecamp. Oh, I see him in attendees. However, he does not have his hand up to comment.
Okay.
Oh, here he is. Wait, there it is.
All right.
Okay, here you go. Mr. Seecamp, go ahead.
Mr. Seecamp, are you there?
Mr. Seecamp has to unmute.
Yeah, here we go.
Okay.
All right. That icon was not up for a while there, so. Well, with the issue of the isolated wetlands, that's my determination is that it's approximately elevation 8. As you can see on the plan, elevation 9 goes through the driveway, and I do not believe that driveway is part of a wetland system. So, and it is not connected by a channel or a pipe to the bordering vegetated wetland across the street.
Okay.
The entire property obviously is a coastal dune and a barrier beach. But, I think that and as I explained in my letter, I think that the planting of beach grass 2 to 1, in my experience, has been sufficient mitigation.
Okay. Thank you. Did you have anything else to add?
No. Other than I know that the previous project is not on the table, but just looking, the issues usually are impervious surface, not how many buildings, but how many how much surface is being created in a resource area like this, and there is a reduction from what was previously approved, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. And that is absolutely the case in redevelopment. This is not redevelopment. This is new construction, and it's new construction in a primary frontal dune, which is assumed to be significant to storm damage prevention and flood control in and of itself. And I don't see how this rises to the standards of permittability.
Well, if I may, Madam Chair, the reason that there isn't just a machine that we check a bunch of boxes and say, does this qualify or not? The reason there are humans involved in this, so there is a pragmatism to this, right? And if your charge is to do what is best for the ecological resources on site, well, I appreciate, as Ms. Lennon has educated us previously, and as you've explained tonight, this is a de novo review, and you are comparing what the plan is. you are human, you are knowledgeable of what is going on in reality out there. And I would urge the commission to make, choices that lead to ultimately the right construction project happening out there versus the one that technicalities may force a less desirable situation for the resource area than being pragmatic and looking at the situation in reality, not just in technicalities. But again, if a third-party review helps the commission maybe go down that path, we can certainly do that. But otherwise, I think as one of the commissioners cited tonight, this, it's a fair project. It's modest for what you typically permit out at Wingershik in similar situations, and it's certainly more modest than we've already permitted on this property. So again, if there's an ability for pragmatism to prevail over technicality, I think this would be a situation in which the human element of this commission would be an asset. And I'll leave it at that for tonight. Thank you.
Well, perhaps a third party reviewer would convince us of that. How do we proceed from here, Adrian? Can we get a third party reviewer?
Sure, I can work on that.
Okay. All right then. Probably not within the next meeting, however. How long do you want to continue this for, Mr. Favela?
I would love to push out for a month in hopes that we can get things working. Hopefully Adrian, on the million things I'm sure are on her bucket list before she heads out of the department, will be able to get us linked up with a viewer.
Okay.
I'll call him one final favor. And so hopefully we can come back in a month. And if not, we can at least update the commission as to where we are with the review.
Okay. In that case, I will entertain a motion, as long as there are no further comments, I'll entertain a motion to continue NOI 0282827 to the Conservation Commission meeting of June 15th.
Charpentier moves to continue NOI 0282827 105 Wingershik Lot A and B to the commission meeting of June 22nd.
And Gradwell seconds.
That is June 15th. And
Is it June 15th?
June 15, yep.
Oh, okay. I'm on, okay. June 15th, corrected.
Commissioner Charpentier,
Yes.
Commissioner Cook,
Yes.
Commissioner Gradwell,
Muted. Mr. Gradwell? We lost him.
nope, he's with us. He says yes, I see him. Okay. Commissioner Sargent
Yes.
and Commissioner Sherman,
Yes.
Chairwoman Jackson.
Yes.
Thank you. And I just want to comment for the edification of the public right now. I can see there are a couple of hands up in the attendees. However, the public comment period has closed for the hearing for 105 Wingershik tonight. So if you are aiming to comment on 105 Wingershik, that opportunity has passed for tonight. You can always submit your comments in writing to conservation@gloucester-ma.gov using 105 Wingershik Road lots A and B in the subject line to have the conservation clerk, Deb Laurie, administrative record. Otherwise, you will have to wait till the next hearing on June 15th to speak. And the next opportunity to speak will be on the next matter before the commission. Now I'm studying this, and Dave Coet, you are here tonight. The commission has not moved 51 Forest Street yet. If you would like, we can certainly open the hearing still.
Yes, please.
Okay, we will now hear NOI 0282836 at 51 Forest Street, Haskell Pond, presented City of Gloucester DPW, represented by David Coet at Pear Park Corporation.
Yes, thank you very much for hearing us today. I also have with us Lauren Gluck, one of our wetland scientists. When we last spoke, it was at the March 18th meeting, and there were a couple of comments to our plans. And we also met on site to do a site walkthrough on April 26th with a few members of the commission. At that time, we did the site walkthrough. It was mainly to kind of illustrate to the commission the scope of the work. A couple of questions that came up during the March 18th meeting were as to the nature of the secondary access road that we were proposing, and also questions about the quantity of the stockpiled, or of the quantity of the material that would be generated from the excavation of the top of the dam, as well as where it would be stockpiled. So on sheet 2, in the walkthrough, we did walk through the secondary access road, and the general comments from the commission were that it was a much more established road than previously thought, but the comments were that we should remove the secondary access road from this submission, as it did represent a slight change from what we had permitted back in 2016, and that if we do need the secondary access road as we progress with the construction efforts, that we permit that through a separate process. So we do, on sheet 2.1 of our plans, we do have that that secondary access road removed. So it was sorry, I'm not sure. I have an updated set here. Adrian, if you want me to share my screen. Because on the drawings you have here, you can see that secondary access road kind of going through the woods.
Right, and you're removing this from the plan set.
Correct.
Okay. I can give you the permission to share. Go ahead.
Should be it. So can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So as you can see here, the secondary access road.
Whoa, what are we looking at?
Sorry.
We're looking at a nice bridge.
Golden Gate Bridge. That was the Golden Gate Bridge.
Just checking.
Okay. Oh, here we have removed the secondary access road from, we still have the outline of the road highlighted, but we've removed it from the limits of disturbance. So we will, in the future, if we now we'll have a couple more conversations with potential contractors. If we deem it necessary, we'll submit that as a separate permanent access route. The other change that we made to this sheet with response to commissioner comments was we added a detail for a erodible material stockpile. And basically we would surround the material with compost filter stock on the site, and then we have a note that if the material is not to be used or not being planned to be used or filled in more within or for days, then we would cover that stockpile with a geotextile filter fabric, which would help shed the rain off of the pile before really being able to erode that material. And then as normal in our construction specifications, we would require the contractor to regularly check the erosion controls and make any necessary repairs or move built up material as needed. As relating to one of the commissioner's other comments, we had some estimates for the amounts of material that would be generated. So this is one of the sections of the dam where we would be excavating down. So to install our secant wall and parapet wall. Top of the dam is currently at elevation 111. We would have to excavate down to elevation 103 to create a working platform large enough for the equipment to install this structure. And there'll be some isolated excavation in sections that will go down as far as elevation 100, and that's just to stabilize the working platform and remove potential obstructions that may interfere with the equipment needed. All told, this will generate approximately 3,200 cubic yards of material. And I have some several potential stockpile locations. So this blue area here, which is in the area of the existing shooting range, it's approximately 13,000 square feet. That 3,200 cubic yards could be stored in that 13,000 square foot area with an average height of about 7.5, 7.6 feet high. We also have, if the contractor placed it within the existing shooting range area and then slightly built up on the existing downstream slope, that would be approximately 25,000 square feet and 4 feet of height. And then we had, if the contractor, we had discussed out in the field that if the contractor were to excavate and just kind of slop the material down onto the downstream slope of the dam, that would result in about 4.5 feet of, in this green area, 4.5 feet of snow. And the last potential area I was looking at was if we really to shrink it down and allow the smallest footprint of stockpiled material, it would be an approximate 7,700 square foot area that would require about 12 to 14 feet of material in this area. All of these potential stockpiles are trying to keep in mind contractor access during construction and minimize, like these areas here, we're trying to minimize the height, because if we did do the stockpiles here, the contractor may need to still use these areas as kind of a staging area where they would be storing materials or equipment on top of the stockpile. This hatched area over here is trying to keep that out of the way and allowing contractor access in staging area. One of the last comments that we had, because this project was fully permitted back in 2016 and most of the permits have expired, there was a question about the requirement for further MEPA coordination. We did have a meeting with Ms. Tori Kim, who is the MEPA director, or the assistant secretary there. And we had a conversation with her back in, Lauren, chime in if I get the date wrong, but I think it was in February.
It may have been, it was November.
November,
So
okay.
it was back in November, but then we followed up with her because we didn't have anything in writing from the meeting. So we asked her to provide, a comment to the commission saying that there would be no additional MEPA review. And she then followed up pretty recently, I think it might have been last week, saying that it would not require further MEPA review. You have the email pulled up. Okay, great. And that no other state permits are needed for the work. So that is accurate, that all the state permits that were accounted for in the original MEPA filing, that's not changing. There was one state permit that we did not move forward and obtain yet, which is the dredge water quality certification, but that was only required for the phase 3 work, which is forthcoming. But we did account for that in the MEPA filing, and the dredge water quality cert office was copied in the distribution list for the ENF. And so I think that we're pretty satisfied with her response that there's no more MEPA review needed.
Okay. Do you have anything further to add, sir?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you for being so responsive to our comments. We're going to go through commissioner comments. Oh, open it up for public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to comment on NOI 0282836 at 51 Forest Street?
All right, Madam Chair, there are 16 panelists on the call. There are 29 attendees and no members of the public to comment at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll close the public comment period and move on to commissioner comments.
Commissioner comments, Commissioner Charpentier,
No comments?
Commissioner Cook,
No comments.
Commissioner Gradwall,
No further comment.
Commissioner Sargent,
No comment.
Commissioner Sherman, excuse me.
My primary concern after the site walk was the secondary access road itself, and as that is no longer proposed, I have no other comments.
Right. Co-Chairwoman Jackson.
I have no comments other than appreciation for the responsiveness. Thank you. In that case, I think we are ready to move forward. And I'm willing to entertain a motion to close the public hearing for NOI 0282836.
Charpentier moves to close the public hearing for NOI 0282836 at 51 Forest Street, Haskell.
And Gradwall seconds.
And a roll call, Commissioner Charpentier,
Yes.
Commissioner Cook,
Yes.
Commissioner Gradwall,
Yes.
Commissioner Sargent,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman,
Yes.
and Co-Chairwoman Jackson.
Yes.
Thank you.
We'll entertain a motion to move forward with the project.
Charpentier moves to approve NOI 0282836 at 51 Forest Street, Haskell Pond.
Gradwall seconds.
And before I do a roll call, Mr. Coet, could you please make sure you send me those updated plan sets and the MIPA email if you haven't already? I am a little underwater.
Yep, I will.
Commissioner Charpentier,
Yes.
Commissioner Cook,
Yes.
Commissioner Gradwall,
Yes.
Commissioner Sargent,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman,
Yes.
and Co-Chairwoman Jackson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up is NOI 0282842 at 50 Essex Avenue.
Eric Kelly with Environmental Partners. I'm here again this evening with you all. At our hearing 2 weeks ago, the commission had two leftover comments related to expanding our site restoration features along the coastal bank on the eastern and western edges of our project within the confines of the water treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant campus, also along Essex Avenue, fronting along the street, and also providing some supplemental information in regards to the secondary emergency access road out the back to Marshfield Street. That was specific to existing conditions and where our alignment was in relation to several trees that were visible in the photos we had shared previously. We prepared a small supplemental letter that we shared with Adrian's office, she has on the screen now, to provide that supplemental photography and rough limits of the access road. Generally speaking, the access road is 10 to 14 feet wide and about 60 feet long between the existing treatment plant fence line and where it meets existing asphalt coming off Marshfield Street. So it's roughly 650 square feet. Generally speaking, it's woody debris, leaf litter, relatively free of trees. There was some invasive species, Asiatic bittersweet, present. The existing trees that were brought up during the last hearing are outside the limits of the proposed access road and actually on the abutting private property to the city's parcel. So those would not be directly impacted by the access road. Generally speaking, we're talking about clearing and grubbing, some boulder removal to allow for the installation of the gravel road. We would also be doing invasives removal within the limits of that access road within the right of way. So the photos presented in the supplement show orientations looking uphill and downhill, just to give you a feel for the existing conditions. The second piece, we worked with Brian Madden from LEC to enhance our proposed restoration plans around the edges of our project. On the western edge, we have the coastal bank that will be abutting our earthen berm, which is part of the flood resilience system. On the eastern side, we have coastal bank that will be downslope of the proposed sheet pile wall. And along Essex Avenue, we have some additional enhancements in currently turf grass areas, as well as the additional plantings we presented 2 weeks ago at the northwestern corner. So that is provided in a supplemental plan that Adrian has on the screen now. Brian's here tonight if you have any questions regards to the plantings themselves, and Dylan and my colleague are also here just to answer any questions you might have concerning the restoration or the access road.
Okay, thank you very much. First, we'll open it up for public comment. Excuse me. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to comment on the project at 50 Essex Avenue, NOI 0282842?
All right, Madam Chair, there are 13 panelists on the call, 30 attendees, and it appears no members of the public to comment at this time.
Okay, then we'll close the public comment period and move on to commissioner comments.
Sure. Commissioner comments. Commissioner Charpentier.
No, I appreciate the additional work and have no other comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Cook.
No comments.
Commissioner Gradwell.
No additional comment.
Commissioner Sargent.
Yeah, thank you for the additional mitigation plantings. With regard to the access road from Marshfield Street, could you please explain what, quote, relatively free of trees, quote, refers to, and the number of trees that maybe are 7 inches or greater in diameter? And finally, there should be a 2-year monitoring for mortality of the mitigation plantings.
Okay. Commissioner Sherman.
No further comments.
Co-Chairwoman Jackson. Excuse me, Chairwoman Jackson.
No further comment.
Okay.
Adrian, would you like to answer
Yes,
Commissioner
please.
Sargent's question?
Yes, please.
Commissioner Sargent, there are no trees greater than 6 inches within the limits of the proposed gravel access road.
Thank you.
Okay. Adrian, did you have any comments on this?
So I want to thank Eric, Kelly, and Environmental Partners for their considerable efforts here to install restoration planting and really improve the perimeter of the entire property. Once the berm is up, it is very likely that it's not going to ever be impacted again. So having the installation of some really nice plantings on the resource area side is a great opportunity right now. And I'm very happy that you are going to the trouble to take it. I will point out that there is some invasive species that's just off the plan set here, over here on this side, also still on the parcel that were not included. So my hope is that if there is an opportunity, or if for some reason Environmental Partners needs to come back and amend the order of conditions, that they would do so to include that additional planting and restoration work here on this side of Essex Ave. That would really make it a very complete site as far as all the improvements you could possibly make given the circumstances. And I look forward to seeing the finished project.
Adrian, would that area you're speaking of be the one kind of where I don't know how the boulder pile came to be there, kind of outside the fence line to the northeast?
That's
corner?
correct.
Okay, it's kind of like, I would say Phragmites, but I might be misspeaking. I'd defer to Brian on that, but there's a large kind of boulder pile that I'm assuming has come to be there from past city projects or?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, of course, it's not inside of the scope of the work tonight, and I absolutely agree. I've done a very nice job of coming up with a robust planting plan, which I really appreciate. However, you know, when it dead ends over here, it's going to dead end into a stand of invasive Phragmites, among other things, and also there's some fill and you know, just generally degraded blight on the site that will be the last of what's there. So
we can definitely bring that up with DPW for consideration and, either outside of this project, but under a future action out there.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we're ready to move forward with this. Linda, would you like to make a motion to close the close the hearing?
Yes, Charpentier moves to close public hearing for NOI 0282842 50 Essex Avenue.
And Gradwell seconds.
And a roll call, Commissioner Charpentier,
Yes.
Commissioner Cook,
Yes.
Commissioner Gladwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Sargent,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman.
Yes.
Chairwoman Jackson.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Linda, can we hear from you again?
Yes, Charpentier moves to approve NOI 0282842 50 Essex Avenue.
Gradwell seconds.
And a roll call, Commissioner Charpentier,
Yes.
Commissioner Cook,
Yes.
Commissioner Gradwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Sargent,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman,
Yes.
Chairwoman Jackson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, you're all set. Thank you very much, sir.
All right, thank you. And Adrian, please let us know whatever we need to, if there's any final, because we went through the 3 iterations, just to complete package, just to close out for the order. Just let me know.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.
You too. Okay, next up, we have NOI 0282848 12 Sumner Street. Hadi Fiallo, represented by John Judd, Gateway Consultants, Inc.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission, representing the applicant, John Judd, engineer with Gateway Consultants. You may recall, we last met on the 4th of May, and we received several comments from both the abutters and the board members. And we subsequently submitted a revised plan on the 9th of May that I believe addressed those items. And I'd like to just briefly identify some of those items that were modified on this revised plan. Thank you, Adrian, for bringing that up. So I think the big part of the discussion had to do with the work inside the upland edge. And so what we've done, and that included the rain garden that's proposed, or the drainage swale, and the boulder wall that was previously proposed. So what we've done, I consulted with the applicant, Skylar, who is proposing to build this house. And we've agreed to pull everything outside that upland edge as requested. We've moved the house closer, as close as possible, that we could to the septic system, and moved it uphill. And so basically everything is outside the upland edge. In addition to that, we've added the variance note that was requested for the proposed leaching facility being within 200 feet of the ACEC, and we're just shy of 200 feet. We're 193 feet, as shown on the note. And as far as in to address the equal and equivalent environmental standards that are pretty much the requirement. This is a system that again has advanced treatment and pressure distribution. So that is part of the design. And we did add the impervious area calculations, and we did correct that error with that erroneous number. We did shade the total the mitigation area as requested, and as shown on the plan, we have the mitigation notes as well as the impervious area calculations. I just want to remind the commission, we did have a report that was submitted from Mary Rimmer that is made part of this application for the rejuvenation of that buffer zone and the replanting and mitigation. So I can answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Judd. We'll open it up first for public comment. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to comment on NOI 0282848 at 12 Sumner Street?
Madam Chair, there are 10 panelists on the call, 30 attendees. Christine, I see your hand up first. I'm going to allow you to talk and ask you to unmute. Go ahead.
And name and address for the record, please.
I'm Christine Baxter of 14 Sumner Street. The revised plan was only made available yesterday, but there are some things that are concerning about it. The revision is in conflict with the Board of Health approved septic plan. That plan had a reserve leach field that has been removed from the new plan, and the proposed house has been moved forward over the area of the reserve leach field. Should the Board of Health first review any changes now that the plan they approved has been altered? The Board of Health plan also had specific drainage details to ensure that all drainage would flow away from the leach field and property line. And the revised plan does not include any of those drainage details. Given the size of the proposed home and the amount of impervious area being created, we want to ensure that all water is able to remain on 12 Sumner Street and that there is no runoff onto neighboring properties or Walker Creek or the area of critical environmental concern. Also specific to this new plan, the retaining wall has been removed from the upland edge, but not replaced elsewhere. This is a concern because much of the construction would be on previously filled land with a significant drop off in the upland area, which flows down to the James property and into Walker Creek. We still have many of the same concerns that were raised at the previous meeting that have not been addressed. Regulations require that no vegetation be cut within the upland edge, but this area is being significantly disturbed with 4,080 square feet of mitigation plantings replacing what is currently there. Regulations require that no component of any drainage system or septic system be installed within 100 feet of the upland edge or 200 feet of the area of critical environmental concern, yet the entire septic system and a portion of the leaching field are still located within this area. We're concerned about construction on a vacant lot that has been previously filled in and the removal of large trees and old root systems on a steep slope, all of which will likely lead to erosion. The proposed leaching field is directly next to our side yard, which gets standing water and moderately heavy rains, and we get water in our basement from the side. So we want to ensure that the proposed septic isn't draining into our yard and that effluent isn't coming into our yard and basement. While the new plan now shows the leach field 11 feet from our property, how close is the retaining wall and does this conform to zoning? Again, I would also like to reiterate the importance of this lot as it relates to the Great Marsh. This is a vacant lot that overlooks Walker Creek. Walker Creek discharges into the Essex Bay and is part of the Great Marsh, one of the most important coastal ecosystems in northeastern North America, and a designated area of critical environmental concern. According to Mass Audubon, recent extensive studies on the health of the marsh have determined that the ecosystem is currently in good shape, but that this area is facing serious threats, including residential and commercial development, excessive soil erosion and degradation, disturbance to birds or habitat, water pollution, pesticides, and more. Mass Audubon specifically notes that although much of the upland within the watershed of the marsh is protected, the remaining land has either been extensively developed or is threatened with development as it is here. And without continued conservation efforts and growth planning, widespread degradation of the ecosystem is still a threat. Thank you.
Thank you. Adrian, do we have any others who wish to comment?
Brian Gallardo, I will allow you to talk and ask you to unmute. Go ahead.
Hi, Brian Gallardo, 16 Sumner Street. First, I'd like to ask a question about the 10-17-19 plan that's referenced as the mitigation plan. I called the conservation office and I was unable to receive the plan. As Christina had brought up, this plan that we're looking at today only got uploaded on yesterday. So then when we got the plan, we then noticed that it was now referencing a 2019 plan. And so I was wondering, is this on file now at the Conservation Commission to review? I know yesterday, at least I couldn't get an answer on whether it was available. So that's one question. Secondly, I'd like to reiterate my concerns about the location of the home and the size of the home, given the concerns with the ACE and drainage and the expectation from the Board of Health plan and as is required under the Wetland Protection Act and the bylaw to keep any affluence and drainage on the underlying property. Given the size of the home, there's only 10 feet on either side to allow for any drainage that's running in that direction. At the septic system outside of the underlying retaining wall seems to be somewhere in the ballpark of 3 to 5 feet. So it would be rather important, I think, to understand exactly where this drainage will be going and how it can properly remain on the site and not on any other properties or enter the or move towards the upland edge and then ultimately into the ACEC if there is runoff, and in particular in the event of a large storm event, and if there is any erosion from the mitigation plan. That's where my major concern is that without knowing what the mitigation plan says, if that planting isn't done accordingly with that size of a home being built, that runoff is going to run pretty quickly down there and cause all kinds of siltation and other issues in the underlying ACEC area.
Okay, thank you very much. Adrian, is there anyone else?
I do not see any other commenters at this time.
Okay. Would the applicant like to respond to the audience questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just go backwards. As far as the drainage, we're showing exactly what was approved by the Board of Health in terms of the retaining wall. And the swales are also very similar, only we're adding additional treatment and mitigation planting. So as you know, the drainage, as far as the abutters are concerned, are reviewed. All applications are reviewed by the city engineer, and that is part of the building permit process as far as not draining onto other people's property, abutters, or the street for that matter. In terms of the ACEC, with the enhancement of the upland edge that's proposed by Mary Rimmer, as well as the stormwater storage and infiltration area that's proposed as part of this plan, we are confident, as well as the erosion control fencing and fortification that will take place during construction. We're confident that that will not have any negative impacts to both the ACEC as well as the neighboring properties. And as far as the septic, again, this is what is shown on the approved plan that was prepared by others. And we showed that in the same location, the same wall, same height. And that's all I can really refer to that. That is a plan that was approved in writing by the Board of Health as well. And they can answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, let's move on to commissioner comments.
Commissioner comments, Commissioner Charpentier,
No comments?
Commissioner Cook.
Yeah, I'm still really concerned about the drainage. I know how steep this area is back here. There's a note in the plans that says, I think it's note 7, that says the contractor and the owner is responsible to make sure that appropriate drainage pipes and whatnot is put in there. I would definitely like to see more detail. I'd like to see those, the lines where the piping is going to be. I really don't think the swale that is there is going to be adequate in the event of a major rainstorm or anything. And then because it is filled property, I would say the drainage into the ACEC is probably more than if it had been packed soil in another area. So I have some concerns about this. I do want to revisit the city ordinance as far as what is allowed as far as the septic system within the buffer zone. I'm not sure the Board of Health addresses that within the city ordinances as it applies to the Wetlands Protection Act. So those are my concerns.
Okay. Commissioner Gradwall.
I agree with Commissioner Cook that the fact that it was uploaded yesterday didn't give us very much of a chance to see the changes.
Commissioner Sargent.
Yes, areas of critical environmental concern have elevated performance standards compared to other resource areas. Almost all of this entire project is within the 200-foot buffer zone to the upland edge of the ACEC and is jurisdictional. It appears that over 4,000 square feet of mitigation plantings, as well as 4 trees, would need to be located within the upland edge itself, all within 100 feet of the ACEC. In order to permit this project, the Commission must determine that the overall project, as well as the septic system, meet the highest performance standard of absolutely no adverse impact to the area of critical environmental concern. It's noted that the burden of proof is upon the applicant to show this project would have absolutely no adverse impact to the ACEC or the upland edge. And I don't believe the burden of proof has been met with this application. Thank you.
Okay. And Commissioner Sherman.
No comment.
Chairwoman Jackson.
You've heard the other commissioners' comments, and I would like to see approval by the Board of Health for the revisions to the plan. I believe in order to place the septic system where it is, we would need to grant a waiver of the Gloucester Wetlands Ordinance. There's not a lot of choice on that lot. Those are my comments. So you've heard our concerns. It's looking like we need at least one more continuation. Is that an issue?
Not an issue. If I could, Madam Chair, I just wanted to make sure that specifically, I think Bill had asked that the pipes be shown on the plan, which we do show from the dwelling into the treatment swale. As far as the note number 7, that is the intent of that is to make sure that the cellar slab is properly constructed with appropriate drainage devices, which, again, would tie into the same swale. So that's more or less to ensure that the craftsmanship of the foundation and the structure are properly executed. As far as the leaching facility, that has not changed from the approved plan from the Board of Health. So that is, there's no change there on that wall, the septic location. So that's really the extent of it. I'm not sure what else can be done in terms of the burden of proof. We are showing advanced effluent treatment, which is what we did on the last project adjacent to the ACEC that the commission approved last month. So I'm a little confused about the burden of proof, but it was always my understanding with advanced effluent treatment that equal and equivalent protection has been made for the groundwater. But we can certainly continue this, and I can maybe talk to the applicant and see if there's any other modifications that they would be willing to offer up for this project. Specifically the size of the house. I think that's pretty much what the main concern of the commissioners are.
Thank you. Has the Board of Health agreed to the revision?
There is no revisions to the leach field, so there's no change to that. It doesn't impact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Before you move on, I just want to ask the applicant's representative to please modify the variance request to, this is a little bit deep, but to specifically request a variance from section 12-15. B, performance standards. So that's Bravo, performance standards 2, Bravo 3, which,
Okay.
yeah, 2, Bravo 2, Bravo 3, 12-15. Which specifically says no components of any drainage system or a septic system shall be installed within 100 feet of the upland edge, that is within 200 feet of the ACEC. And that's the relief you're looking for specifically in the variance. The way it's stated now could be interpreted as though it's a request from the Gloucester Wetlands Ordinance as a whole.
Okay, will do.
Thanks.
Okay, then why don't we continue? Can you be ready for June 1st?
Yes, Madam Chair, we'll get these modifications made.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
Linda?
you.
Yeah, Sharpton moves to continue NOI 0282848 at 12 Sumner Street to the commission meeting of June 1st.
And Gradwell seconds.
And roll call, Commissioner Charpentier,
Yes.
Commissioner Cook,
Yes.
Commissioner Gradwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Sargent,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman,
Yes.
Chairwoman Jackson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Judd. We will move on to see you again. NOI 0282849 at 77 Eastern Point Road. Owner George Kalmakis, represented by John Judd, Gateway Consultants, Inc. Before we start this, I recused myself from this last time. In Mr. Gulla's absence, I will participate with the acknowledgement that I have sporadic social relationships with the owners in terms of occasional golf dates and occasional committee work. However, I feel I can be objective to this if no one objects. So hearing no objection, we will move on. And Mr. Judd, would you like to address this?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Once again, John Judd representing the applicants for this property at 77 Eastern Point Boulevard. When we last met on the 4th of May, we did receive some comments which I believe have been addressed on this plan, which is revised that you see on the screen. Thank you, Adrian. Specifically, there was a request for the impervious area calculations, which we've added for the buffer zone impervious area, which was added to the plan, and the proposed native mitigation planting, which is essentially a large part of this project. The project itself is, you may recall, is the in-ground pool construction and extensive landscaping across the property. This is the new home for the applicants, and they really want to spruce up the landscaping. So as part of that meeting, there was also a request for the pool discharge, where that would be discharged during, and so what we've done is added a detail for subsurface pool discharge drywall for those periodic times when the pool would be drawn down in the fall to allow for winterization. So that drywall is shown on the plan where we have sufficient soil, as indicated by the existing tanks that were installed about 20 years ago. We have some data on the soils over in that area, and that was adequate for the depth. Big part of what we've done on this revised plan, we removed anything within the coastal bank. There was originally some stone steps that would be rearranged going down into the water within the coastal bank, and that has all been removed. So there's no activity proposed that's in that location at this time, or going forward, I should say. And erosion control barrier was added, as well as the we did add the temporary construction access from the driveway to the pool area. I think that was requested. And I just wanted to point out that all the shading that you see there, the hatching, is proposed landscaping area. It's not, there's very little landscaping, especially to the right of the house. In fact, we had submitted photograph. I don't know if that was uploaded, Adrian, but it just gives an idea that how little landscaping exists currently, and it's the intent of the applicant. There you go. Thank you. That shows pretty significant landscaping that is proposed to really improve the ground cover and the buffer zone to the coastal bank. And that's it. I can answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Judd. We'll open it up for public comment. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to comment on the project at 77 Eastern Point Boulevard?
Hey, Madam Chair, there are 10 panelists on the call, 23 attendees, and no members of the public to comment at this time.
Okay, then I will close the public comment period. We'll move on to commissioner comments.
Comments, Commissioner Charpentier. You are muted.
No comments.
Commissioner Cook.
First, I'd like to thank them for removing those other steps and stuff going on. The only thing I'd like to make a note of is the pool is going in within the existing seawall. And just have it understood that if for some reason that seawall needs to be is damaged, moved, or adjusted during the installation of that pool, that they need to come back to the Conservation Commission.
Okay. That's fine. Commissioner Gradwall.
Gradwall appreciates they putting in the dry wall and taking the steps out. Very nice job. Thank you.
Commissioner Sargent.
Thank you for the revisions. There should be a 2-year monitoring for mortality of the mitigation plantings. That's it.
Okay. Commissioner Sherman.
No comments.
Co-Chairwoman Jackson.
No comments.
Okay.
And it also should be noted that I did listen to the hearing last time.
Okay.
Okay. All right. In that case, then we will move forward. Linda?
Charpentier moved to approve NOI.
No,
zero-
not-
Oh,
no,
no, close the
close the-
public comment, right?
Close the hearing.
Yeah, Charpentier moves to close the public comment on NOI 0282849 at 77 Eastern Point Road
And the hearing.
and the hearing.
Thank you.
And Gradwall seconds.
Okay, and a roll call. Commissioner Charpentier.
Yes.
Commissioner Cook.
Yes.
Commissioner Gradwall.
Yes.
Commissioner Sargent.
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman.
Yes.
Chairwoman Jackson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Linda, now you get to go again.
Now we go. Charpentier moves to approve NOI 0282849 at 77 Eastern Point Road.
Gradwall seconds.
And a roll call. Commissioner Charpentier.
Yes.
Commissioner Cook.
Yes.
Commissioner Gradwall.
Yes.
Commissioner Sargent.
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman.
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson.
Yes,
Thank you. Or Chairwoman Jackson, excuse
I answer to both.
Okay, thank you all very much. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Jack. Okay, next up, we have NOI 0282852, 57 Adams Hill Road, owned by Marilyn Short, represented by William Manuel, Wetlands and Land Management.
Good evening, everyone. Bill Manuel from Wetlands and Land Management. We had some discussion at the first hearing. And the first thing I'd like to talk about is there was a question of whether there was riverfront area on affecting this project. And I have submitted the DEP mouth of river map. And there it is. And we are well upshore of that. So we are not within the riverfront zone of the Annisquam. So we don't have any riverfront area on this property. Secondly, I submitted a revised plan that cleaned up some drafting details. And if Adrian, if you can pop that up, I'd like to just walk you through that. There was some, so I've clarified the limit of the deck that is going to be dismantled and rebuilt by using a single line on the outline of the deck. Recall it had a double line last plan iteration, and it was confusing with the limit of masonry walls that are going to be installed on that new pervious bluestone terrace. So the blue line there is the outline of a 2-foot, 8-inch high concrete retaining wall that's going to retain the bluestone terrace. And sitting in that, right where Adrian's cursor is right now, is one of those self-contained spas. Basically, it'll sit on a concrete pad. It's filled with water. It doesn't, and you supply power to it. I'm sure everybody knows what I'm speaking of. And then surrounding that on the water side is a 6-inch tall granite edging to define what would be a planting bed, so that there can be some screening plantings, so folks aren't looking at the side of this spa. So that should clarify the extent of the deck and the extent of the small limited extent of where that low retaining wall is going to go, and then where the planting area is going to be. I also clarified things that are already existing, the retaining wall over on the left side of the plan, the stepping stones and that sort of stuff that is already existing. So the project is only to dismantle the deck that's there, dismantle the masonry planter that's on the right side behind the garage, and then rebuild the deck, add that new pervious bluestone terrace, steps to grade, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. Going to open this up for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to comment on the project at 57 Adams Hill Road?
Hey, Madam Chair, there are 9 panelists on the call, 22 attendees, and no members of the public to comment at this time.
Okay, then I will close the public comment period, and we'll open this up for commissioner comments.
Sure, commissioner comments. Commissioner Charpentier.
I just appreciate the extra clarification. No other comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Cook.
None at this time.
Commissioner Gradwell.
And at this time,
Commissioner Sargent.
Thank you for the clarification on DEP's definition that the mouth of the Ennisquam River is from Farm Point to Babson Point. That was helpful. My confusion was based on Marine Fisheries definition that the mouth of the Ennisquam River is from Farm Point to the Ennisquam Lake and would have included this property. But thank you for that clarification.
Okay. Commissioner Sherman.
No comments.
Chairwoman Jackson.
No comments. Thank you for the clarifications. Much appreciated. And I wish the government would get itself together. Okay.
You and me both. I thought the same thing. So I'm pleased that.
Well, yeah.
Not a chance, not a chance.
Okay, let's move forward with this. Linda, would you like to close the hearing?
Charpentier moves to close the hearing for NOI 0282852 at 57 Adams Hill Road.
Gradwell seconds.
And a roll call. Commissioner Charpentier.
Yes.
Commissioner Cook.
Yes.
Commissioner Gradwell.
Yes.
Commissioner Sargent.
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman.
Yes.
Chairwoman Jackson.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Linda, you're on again.
Charpentier moves to approve NOI 0282852 at 57 Adams Hill Road.
Gradwell seconds.
And a roll call. Commissioner Charpentier.
Yes.
Commissioner Cook.
Yes.
Commissioner Gradwell.
Yes.
Commissioner Sargent.
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman.
Yes.
Chairwoman Jackson.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emmanuel. We are on to new business. First up is RDA 1729 at 253 East Main Street. Robert Bradshaw is the applicant and the presenter. Mr. Bradshaw, are you with us?
There he is. Oh, I see 2. I shall promote you to panelist.
Okay.
Both of you. both Both Robert Bradshaws.
And Mr. Bradshaw, if you could give us your name and address for the record and summarize the project for us. After you unmute yourself.
Oh, you.
Should we table him and come back?
Well, I did see, Mr. Bradshaw, you were able to unmute for a minute there.
Unmute. Can you hear
There
me?
you are.
Yes, yes,
Good.
there you are. Mr.
The
Bradshaw.
screen went blank for a while. I'm sorry. And it said I'm joining a different, I don't know what happened. But
Well, I'm
I'm here
glad
now.
you're with us. If you could give us your name and address for the record and a brief summary of the project, we'd appreciate it.
Oh, did you mute yourself again, sir? I think you may have. All right, we'll try. He's on twice. Oh. Oh dear. Okay, Mr. Bradshaw, you are on twice. So I think he may have removed himself and he'll be back.
Okay, why don't we table this? And Mr. Bradshaw, we will come back to you. Why don't we move on with NOI 0282851 at 16 Rouse Road? Owner David Greenberg, represented by Dan Ottenheimer, Mill River Consulting.
Hey, good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Dan Ottenheimer, engineer with Mill River Consulting in Gloucester. And here representing Kathy and David Greenberg. They own a house. If you squint hard enough, you can see the Queen of England, perhaps. It's a lovely location, right on the water. And they are voluntarily undertaking a fix-up of their septic system. So that's the only thing that's in front of you. The house is not for sale. They just know that they have some operational issues and they want to do it right. And so that's what we're doing here. So I met the health inspector out at the site and we dug a number of test holes all over, and turns out where the current system is pretty much the only suitable location for a replacement septic system. It's going to be a very sophisticated type septic system to clean up the water before it goes out into the ground. And then also it's going to spread the water out throughout the entire leach field to get even further treatment as well. So this has been approved by the Board of Health. And the work is proposed, most of the site is in the flood zone. So we're within land subject to coastal storm flowage. And we're in the buffer zone to adjacent bordering vegetated wetlands as well. So obviously we're proposing erosion control between the area of construction and both the ocean and the freshwater wetlands. And that's the project in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll open this up for public comment. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to comment on the project at 16 Rouse Road?
Madam Chair, there are 9 panelists on the call. There are 15 attendees and no members of the public to comment at this time.
Okay, then I'll close the public hearing. No, I'll close the public comment period. Correction. And we will move on to commissioner comments.
Commissioner comments. Commissioner Charpentier. You are muted.
No comments.
Okay. Commissioner Cook.
Not at this time.
Commissioner Gradwell.
No comment.
Commissioner Sargent.
Yes, Dan, I understand it's an Advantex system, which is a great system, but I'm wondering if it's going to be configured for enhanced nitrogen removal. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Sherman.
I guess I would just like to hear the agent's opinion on this.
Okay. I'm sorry, Chairwoman Jackson.
No, I have no further comments. Adrian?
Okay. We did get comments from DEP, and I also did notice that this project is, of course, falling inside of land subject to coastal storm flowage. It also appears to be 1 inch away from the buffer zone delineation. And so it is likely that discharge is going to impact the resource area. However, understanding that there's very little soil out there on the site. There is an existing septic system on the site, and apparently no other way to locate a septic system. It does seem that enough of a hardship has been demonstrated here to allow for the upgrade to take place where it is. I will point out that it is the scope of the Board of Health to identify whether or not there will be the increase in impact. And so because it's an advanced system with the pretreatment and drip dispersal, I think that is probably the best we're going to get here. And I will turn it over to you, Dan.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, are there any further comments? If not, Mr. Ottenheimer, would you care to respond?
Yes, so thank you, everybody, for your interest. Commissioner Sargent had a good question because there is a way to configure this type of treatment system for removing nitrogen, and that's through the use of a recirculating splitter valve, and that will be included as part of this project.
Okay, good. Okay. If there are no further comments, I think we're ready to move forward. Linda, would you like to close the hearing?
I would love to do that. Charpentier moves to close the public hearing for NOI 028-2851 at 16 Rouse Road.
Gradwell seconds.
And a roll call. Commissioner Charpentier.
Yes.
Commissioner Cook.
Yes.
Commissioner Gradwell.
Yes.
Commissioner Sargent.
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman.
Yes.
Chairwoman Jackson.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Linda?
Charpentier moves to accept NOI or approve NOI 028-2851 at 16 Rouse Road.
And Gradwell seconds.
And a roll call. Commissioner Charpentier.
Yes.
Commissioner Cook.
Yes.
Commissioner Gradwell.
Yes.
Commissioner Sargent.
Yes.
And co-chairwoman, excuse me, Commissioner Sherman.
Yes.
Chairwoman Jackson.
Yes. Could we also have a copy of the Board of Health approval for our files, please?
Sure.
Yeah, I can send that over. No problem.
Yeah, we'd appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Of course.
Okay.
Thank you for your time, Commissioner.
You're welcome. Do we have Mr. Bradshaw back yet?
Yes, Mr. Bradshaw is back as an attendee. So Mr. Bradshaw, I'm going to promote you to panelist. And now you're on the panel side. And it will take a moment for you to connect. But you should be able to use your microphone and screen, hopefully, if you have those things. Here's a camera. There's a mic. Oh. And now he's off again. Okay. We'll take him maybe we'll take him as an attendee next time.
Okay.
You want to move on? We can move on.
Yeah. All right. Mr. Bradshaw, we're tabling you again. We will get back to you. We're going to take up NOI 02828 XX unassigned. Oh, no, 2853. Okay. At 81 Dennison Street. Jeffrey and Andrea Lovely, represented by William Manuel, Wetlands and Land Management, Inc.
Good evening again. Jeffrey and Andrea are relatively new owners of the property. 81 Dennison Street is at the very head of the cove. It's, as you can see, a little triangular piece of property. The house is all the way over to the right of the property. Basically, there's a sort of a large horseshoe driveway that's all paved. And there's essentially grass from Dennison Street down to the edge of the water. The water is improved. The water shoreline's improved with an old wharf with a masonry wall around the perimeter or the three sides of the wharf. And then there's what used to be probably either a loose mortar wall or just a dry set boulder wall, but that's basically sloughed into the marsh, and that'll be the discussion of part of the application. So the big part of the application is to add on a garage and shop addition in the on the right side of the plan where Adrian is indicating now. You can see that there is, as I said, there is a horseshoe-shaped paved driveway that enters two locations off Dennison Street. We're going to make that into a pea-stone driveway and move it over a little bit so there's better visibility when you enter and exit the property. It's sort of a little bit crazy. The grades coming off Dennison Street are a little dramatic. I know when I pull in, I'm kind of looking at the sky for a little bit before I actually nose down into the property. We'll try to fix that a little bit by easing the grade off of Dennison Street, but it's a proposed addition. There'll be some digging for the footing, a little bit of grading. There's the existing step tank, the sewer force main tank. It's a fiberglass tank that's not rated for vehicular traffic, so we're going to have to replace that with an H20 loading tank. It'll be in the same spot. We'll just have to replace that, upgrade it. As far as there's other repairs going on. The existing deck on the left side of the home, that's going to be renovated. The deck boards and railings need upgrade, so that's going to be sort of rehabilitated in the same footprint. There'll be solar panels installed on the roof. There is a short length of fence just off the upper side or the northerly side of the deck, just for a little bit of privacy right there between this and the neighboring property. Then along the waterfront, we have that the wall repair. The wharf, as I said, is a masonry wall that gets the usual repointing, maybe some loose stones there that have to be reset. But that section from the wharf heading to the northerly property line, we'd like to rebuild what would look to be a sort of a dry set boulder wall. And the commission has seen this sort of repair on many projects in Gloucester. We're going to recover the stones that have sloughed in the marsh and, start where the base stones occur. We're not planning on extending out at all into the flats of the marsh, and just sort of rebuild that dry set, put some crushed stone behind it that's going to be wrapped in filter fabric so that when the tide comes in, it'll percolate through the wall, percolate through the stone. When it goes back out, it will recede, and the soil and the soil behind the stone and filter fabric will stay in place. We definitely see some signs of erosion and sloughing in the yard area in that location, and that's why it's important to stop that erosion and look ahead to rising sea levels and try to be proactive now and do it in an orderly fashion as opposed to reacting to a catastrophe perhaps after a larger storm event. And then the last feature is a little ramp and float. We show a 10 by 20 float that just sort of fits right in that triangular piece of the property. It requires a 15-foot ramp. This will be removed seasonally. We think the best way to secure it is the ramp will be secured to the wharf wall and then land on the float. You can see there's a piece of ledge there that's exposed at low water. We'll probably tie off onto that and use helical anchors and rubber flexible roads to secure the float in other locations. 10 by 20 is the usual size, the maximum size the commission's comfortable with. This will be elevated off the flats. The flats would be considered land subject to shellfish or land containing shellfish. So we're going to elevate that by 30 inches off of the flat using legs to keep the float up at low tide. And that's basically it. We do show erosion control for any grading that's occurring up by the house and the driveway. I have submitted this to Division of Marine Fisheries. I do not have comments back from them, so we'll have to continue this. I also got some comments back from the DEP, and I'm going to have to respond to them. I don't think there's any heavy lifting there. If they had seen the property, they probably would have answered a lot of questions for themselves, but I will have to respond to DEP. And then Adrian, I have not submitted this to Harbor Master or Shellfish because I know you usually like to request that. So if that's something that you're interested in, I will, or you can, or I will submit to those two departments for their input.
Mhm. Yes, we will need to do that.
So is that something you would do or I would do?
And at this stage, I will request that you go ahead and send it over to Harbor Master and Shellfish.
Will they accept Mr. Manuel's request where they're used to getting it from you?
You know what? Actually, I'll send it over. I will send it over. That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. We will open this up for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to comment on the project at 81 Dennison Street?
Okay, Madam Chair, there are 8 panelists on the call. There are 16 attendees. I have 3 hands up at this time. I will begin with Anna Maria Davis. I will allow you to talk and ask you to unmute. Please go ahead.
If we can have your name and address for the record, please, and then you state your comments.
Anna has to unmute.
Okay, Anna Maria Davis, we'll come back to you. We'll go to Nina Quinlan. I will allow you to talk and ask you to unmute. Go ahead.
Hi, good evening. My name is Nina Quinlan and my property is 79 Dennison Street, adjacent to 81 Dennison Street. I do have concerns with regard to some aspects of the proposed work referenced in the notice of intent application for 81 Dennison Street, primarily the seawall and boulder wall improvements. I do think it's important for one to protect themselves from water penetration to their property. My concerns lie with how this work may impact surrounding properties with the resultant potential for water level changes and flooding due to water being diverted away from 81 Dennison. The proposal to raise the boulder wall, which I saw in the notice of intent, I believe they're speaking of the boulder wall, to a height of 8 feet is a height much greater than the wall or the surrounding land area has historically been, to the best of my knowledge. To make the wall 8 feet would mean also raising the land of 81 Dennison, as the majority of the property is well below 8 feet. That change in wall height, should it be permitted, together with the granular fill compaction and filter fabric installation, while allowing water to percolate, may well cause waters to be diverted to neighboring and lower lying properties, as well as other areas of the cove already at risk for flooding. With reference to the boulder wall work, I'm wondering how exactly that will be accomplished. Since 79 Dennison Street and 81 Dennison share a property line which runs through the boulder wall, how will the work be done in a manner so as not to disrupt or weaken the wall and boulders adjacent to 81 Dennison, which rest on the property of 79 Dennison? I did not see a mention of prep and protection for the boulder wall at 79 Dennison in order that the integrity of its wall will not be compromised in the process of these repairs. So I would be very interested in finding out how that is to be handled. With respect to the 4-inch asphalt berm for the front of the property line, I do see these berms frequently on various properties. I had always believed their purpose was to mitigate erosion. In this case, it would seem the addition of an asphalt berm is for diversion of water away from the property. If this is the case, since 81 Dennison is at the crest of a hill, water will be diverted on one side of the property to a low point on Holly Street, and on Dennison, it will be diverted to both the property at 79 Dennison and to the low point on Dennison over the culvert and creek where flooding already often occurs. Perhaps something might be included in the plan to mitigate this potential problem. There is a proposed privacy fencing on the site plan running at the back end of the property between 81 Dennison and 79 Dennison, down pretty much to the water's edge at the boulder wall. Fencing down to the cove's edge is a little unusual. I haven't seen it before, but more importantly, would disturb an already fragile coastline. Perhaps natural landscape privacy fencing would serve the same purpose and would be more suitable with appropriate plantings, which would root and help secure the coastline instead of inserting, I think, toxic materials in the ground near the cove's edge. Also, I saw on the site plan some additional short piece of fencing between 79 Dennison and 81 Dennison where there's a small insert or inset. I'm just wondering what the purpose of that is. And lastly, I was just curious if this decision is being made tonight or if the process is that it goes before yet another board or something such as that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to listen to all participant comments first, and then the applicant will respond to those.
Okay, thanks.
Adrian, do we have somebody else?
Yes, okay. I'm going to try Anna Maria Davis again. I will ask you to unmute. Anna Maria, it is, oh, here you go. You should be all set. Go ahead.
Okay now?
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Anna Maria Davis and I'm at 86 Dennison Street, which is diagonal across from the proposed property. In front of my house is like the lowest point on Dennison. My property line goes down the middle of the brook here. But we have a lot of flooding. I mean, you could talk to the DPW about this. It's a major problem. So I'm really concerned about changing the grading of 79 Dennison, which used to be owned by my brother and sister-in-law, who were really careful about trying to keep everything. It had been my father-in-law's property prior to that. Due to death and sicknesses and whatever, the property was sold, and which is, you know, great. And we like to see things beautiful around here, and it's a beautiful neighborhood. But I'm really, really, really super duper concerned about the flooding and what that grade is. And, you know, a proposed site visit and a little more talk about that. That's primarily my major concern.
Okay, Ms. Davis, just for clarification, you're concerned about the grading at 81 Dennison, right? Not at 79.
At 79, because they want to change that because they feel like they can't see that good when they come around, they see the skyline or something.
The project under consideration is at 81 Dennison Street?
81, that's right, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry.
But that's where you're concerned.
Yes, that is my concern. Yep, that's right. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Just wanted to make sure we knew what you want.
No, thank you for that clarification. Yeah, so that's a huge concern. Because I mean, and then in the wintertime when it floods, then it freezes and it's just a nightmare. So if that's gonna be any worse, it can't be any worse. It's gotta get better. So we've been waiting, you know, to see if we could get the city to do something to make it better. But this frightens me that it's gonna make it a lot worse. And I just don't know what we're gonna do about that. So that's my big concern. I just wanted to, you know, also say, you know, how my brother-in-law and sister-in-law were really careful about trying to make sure things kind of stayed conforming to the neighborhood.
Okay,
And so that's all I have. Thank you.
thank you very much.
Okay.
Do we have somebody else?
Yes. Kai Quinlan, your hand is up next. I will allow you to talk and ask you to unmute. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
I'm also at 79 Dennison, one of the direct abutters, and I'd like to echo Nina's comments. You know, concerning redirecting water flow. And also, you know, how to protect our property and the properties of other neighbors who have lower lying properties, which are most of us. At least 3 or 4 immediately surrounding do. And I'm also wondering if the brook comes under the purview of the Conservation Commission, because I know that the asphalt berm is a common thing to do and often a great idea, but as Nina mentioned, in this case, even though that is outside of the 100-foot buffer zone as drawn on the plans that were submitted, it is only terminating at our driveway, which is 54.54 feet. So 54.5 feet from the creek's edge with a, you know, from the brook's edge with a direct slope towards it. So it seems like that would kind of wash out through our driveway and straight into the brook, and it would redirect all that runoff. So that's concerning, and it's been suggested to me that there are ways to mitigate this that could be incorporated into the plan, but I don't see those in the current plan. And there are a couple things in the plan that are a bit confusing for me that I have questions about that maybe can be clarified today. They talk about repair, which, you know, makes sense, but there's a little bit of a contradiction when they bring up perhaps removal of the wall entirely, adding new materials under and behind it, plus the fabric, and then potentially having to add new stones to the seawall. And I wonder if that changes the height of the seawall. My understanding from the Conservation Commission is that that's not allowed, but in the notice of intent, it's described as a presumptive height of 8 feet on the riprap tumble down stone wall. And it's proposed to bring the riprap tumble down stone wall, which joins with our property line, up to a presumed previous height of 8 feet. But that riprap stone wall slopes down towards the built wharf or seawall, which stands now at about 4 to 5 feet. Like, you know, I've stood out there over the years and it's, you know, it's at about 4 feet where it meets up with the riprap tumble down stone wall, and then out at the edge where the rock is indicated, out at the edge nearest our property line in the mud flats, the wharf is at about 54 inches. So how do you bring the riprap tumble down stone wall up to 8 feet without also adding earth to the yard? Is that the plan? And how do you do it then having a sheer drop off from the riprap tumble down stone wall, where if it's now at 8 feet and it meets up with a 4-foot wharf over on the right-hand side of the drawing, you have the big, you've created a cliff. So am I misunderstanding that the seawall isn't to be elevated, and is the plan to elevate the whole seawall from about 4 feet to 8 feet? If so, that concerns me gravely in terms of redirecting water flow to adjacent properties. And I'm wondering what mitigation measures can be taken and how those can be incorporated into the plan. And it seems like this calls for more study or, an impact study or some such, and is that under consideration? And then lastly, I wanted to ask, and also I wanted to ask if we could have time to vet whether this was in fact a pre-existing height, because, being here for the last 5 years and talking to generational families about what it looked like and looking at old pictures, I don't necessarily think that it was, because that was all built in what was, I believe, a public access once upon a time. So I'd like time to look into that. Will that be granted, or is a decision rendered today? And is this the last opportunity for public comment at this meeting? Or is some special permit or variance required for any of the proposed work? If it's not, and today's the last opportunity for public comment, then what's the timeline for the work? And if there is an additional opportunity, where would that be? What other approvals are required? And also, could we see a plan that speaks to other elevations and to materials to be used? For instance, for the fencing, and whether there would be any mortar in the wall, and how to make sure that our wall isn't accidentally removed or tumbled down when new material is brought in and things start moving around. And I'll close there.
Okay, very much for your comments. Adrian, is there anyone else?
Sure. Helene Dion, I will allow you to talk and ask you to unmute. Go ahead.
Hello, this is Hélène Dion. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, name and address for the record, please.
Yes, I live at 75 Denison, so I am the property adjacent to 79 across the brook, and so I look at 81 Denison also. So my comments, one is the need for clarification as well in terms of what will be happening to the wharf wall and I'm calling it the boulder wall, because I just wanting to confirm that indeed the wharf wall will not be raised at all. I know that in the writing I was a bit confused. It sounds like that's the case, that it will not be raised. And the boulder wall, I am also, as Kai was asking, kind of confused about whether they will remain in the planning a slope going from where the yard stops and would meet the boulder, and then would the boulder slope down to the water, and also to make sure that of course people need to be able to stop further erosion to their property, but so that from my understanding is then that the yard is not going to be expanded, that it will be where it is right now. But also I'm having trouble visualizing if I'm going to be looking at kind of a vertical 8 feet, or as I say, a sloping kind of boulders to the water. In terms of so there's the visual aspect for me, just trying to figure it out, to visualize, but the essential point of my concern is certainly the one of what it may mean for the water level to my property. Because right now I don't have problems, and I'm really concerned. I realize that Mr. Manuel talked about the fact that it's unlikely that any work on site will have additional detrimental effect on neighborhood properties. But I wonder if there's a way to have somebody else's opinion on that. I just, because I respect, Mr. Manuel's opinion, but I would like to get maybe an independent perspective. So that's my big concern, is the issue of water, whether the water level will be worse for my property. I also want to add to what Maria was saying, and other people also, the concern about flooding on the street by the brook and in front of Maria's property and so forth. This is truthfully a problem already. And so if there is any water added, that will be made even more, much worse. So I have grave concerns about that as well. Those are my main concerns.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Adrian, do we have anybody else who wants to speak?
We do. So there is a hand up. It is an unnamed entity of many characters. You will have to state your name and address for the record. But I will allow you to talk and ask you to unmute.
Okay. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, it's Michelle Meyer. I'm at 83 Dennison, which is kind of across the street. And I pretty much agree with what everybody is saying. I'm very concerned about the flooding issue. I've been there for 25 years. That my cottage was originally a garage, and I went through all of these committees to get it turned into a house. But about 5 or 6 years ago, I had done another renovation, and I'd never had a water problem, with the house, and it's banked into the hillside. And just as I was finishing my renovation, there had been some changes just upstream from me, and it's such a sensitive area. They had done some development up by the pond, and it ended up, I had to end up digging up my whole property, putting a curtain drain all the way around, because I was getting all kinds of water coming up against my foundation. And just from a small thing that was done upstream, it totally changed the water flow. And it was, a huge thing that I had to do. So it made me aware of just how sensitive that area is. And there has been, I never used to see street flooding like there's been recently, and especially in the winter when it freezes, it's very dangerous. And I just think this just looks like there's an awful lot of changes being made that could impact the area. And we only just found out, I just found out about this. I mean, I don't think there was a whole lot of notice given or any chance to really do an impact study or anything like that. As far as I know for this property, but for the rest of us, how is this going to affect the rest of the neighborhood? That's what I'm concerned about. So again, I'm echoing what everybody else is saying, but I guess that's my one question is, can we have some time to get some independent opinions about how this will impact the neighborhood? Thanks. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Adrian, do we have anyone else who wishes to comment?
All right, so at this time, I'm going to put down the hands that are people who have already spoken. 16 attendees on the call. It does not look like any additional public comments.
Okay, then I will close the public comment period. We will move on to Mr. Manuel. Would you like to respond to these concerns?
Sure. There was a lot of them, but I think they boiled down into essentially we're worried about work along the waterfront and flooding on the street. So first of all, I want to make sure that people aren't confused when we said the wall, the boulder wall would rebuild to what we presume to be elevation 8. And that does not mean it's an 8-foot high wall. Adrian is highlighting the existing grade of the land out there on this particular datum is identified as elevation 8. And you can see the existing grade right now goes basically right up to the precipice of where that sort of boulder wall has sort of sloughed down. Right where her cursor is now is elevation 7. So the elevation of the wharf, the ground at the top of the wharf is elevation 7. So there will be a grading transition between the top of the repair of the boulder wall, which is intended to meet the current grade now. When we have erosion and such, there's a little bit of head scratching to say, well, where was the grade? We don't have the erosion is not that dramatic that we can't figure it out. Basically, it's the erosion that's occurring is right along the edge, and then we are getting pockets where the earth is just is sloughing down. We have sort of these little washout pockets. So the top of the boulder wall is intended to meet the top of the grass right along the edge of the marsh there, which is very close to elevation 8. It will transition down to the top of the wharf wall, which is elevation 7. I think another question was, will this divert water to other properties, or will the activity on the site divert water to other properties? And the answer is, I don't believe it will. Number one, if we're talking about coastal flooding, the area is the entire site, as well as all of the homes at the top of the cove are encumbered by coastal flooding in a large storm event. And as you know, there's only one way for stormwater to enter the cove, and that's through the culvert down at the causeway. And so as the tide water advances, all areas of the surrounding properties are going to be inundated equally. This particular project doesn't raise the grade at all, that it's going to divert or cause diversion of any of that advancing tide water onto other properties. It's all going to, just as a bathtub fills up equally, that's what happens in the cove, and the cove's going to fill up, and everywhere that's predicted to be inundated in a 100-year event is going to get inundated in a 100-year event equally. How would we build the wall without impacting the wall on 79 Denison? Well, when we get close to the property line, we certainly have no intention of straying across the property line, and the excavator is going to have to place those boulders in carefully and just work within the confines of the existing property. Fortunately, we're working with large boulders and stone wrapped in filter fabric, so basically it's a fairly simple bank stabilization technique, and I don't think we're going to have any problem staying within the confines of 81 Denison. With respect to the asphalt berm, looking at the plan closely, I had originally thought that the berm was only intended to be along that section where we're actually closing off a portion of the driveway. As I said, we're pushing that driveway to the southeast, the entrance, and having one driveway entrance there. We're going to abandon the southerly entrance that's on the hard curve of Denison Street. And basically that asphalt berm is a bituminous curbing that closes off the old driveway entrance. I see it is carried down along the entire width of the frontage. I will look at that and see if that is necessary. I'll talk with the owners and see if there is a specific reason why it was carried down that far, but it is not intended. It was really intended to just block off where the old driveway entrance is and better define where the new driveway entrance is. I want to point out that the garage entrance is a full 6 feet lower than Denison Street. And also you can see all of the contours show that the land slope is sloping inward to this property away from Denison Street. So it's physically impossible for any of this driveway runoff to get back out onto Denison Street, because frankly, everything flows towards the driveway, towards this existing house. One of the very important aspects that I sort of brushed over in my original presentation is we're taking up that very large asphalt driveway and we're replacing it with the pervious pea stone surface. So that's over 900 square feet of impervious area that disappears as a result of this project. So that alone should alleviate a lot of the neighbors' concerns that is this going to cause additional runoff? And the answer is no, because there's almost 1,000 square feet of less impervious surface even after the addition is built. So in that respect, we've improved the site by quite a bit. The fencing, there's not a lot of room there. The privacy fencing, there's just not a lot of room. I will have a discussion with the Lovelies and see if there's room for some sort of natural vegetative fencing there. We'll have that discussion. The small fence further up the house closer to Denison Street, that's just a screening fence because that's where the air conditioner condensers are going to be, and it's just a way to screen the view from those air conditioner condensers. Again, Kai Quinlan spoke of the berm along the street. I think I've addressed that. I'll look into that further. The repair of the wall, it is not intended to raise the height of the grade of that backyard at all. It's intended to meet the grade of the backyard and stabilize that slope. I pointed out to you that the wharf elevation is 7 and not 4. As far as Eileen Dion at 75 Denison Street. When I was explaining to the Lovelies how all of this would work on the repair of their boulder wall, I pointed to your property, which I worked on several years ago. And I said, that's basically Exhibit A. That's what we're trying to accomplish. What we did at 75 Denison was the same thing. A lot of the walls were sloughing down and the slopes were eroding directly along the marsh and along the cove. We laid in some large boulders there and at the toe of the historic boulder walls, and came up at basically a 1-to-1 slope and met the height of the existing lawn. So that's essentially what we're trying to accomplish with this short section of boulder wall. The wharf wall itself is not being raised at all. That is just being repointed, or any loose stones are going to be reset. And I believe your question about what does it mean to the water level on her site, in a large storm event, the whole cove area, the top of the cove is going to be inundated equally, and there's nothing that we can do about that. But in terms of any runoff caused by this project, I think we've improved the situation by reducing the amount of impervious area. And as far as what's happening on Denison Street, none of this work, which is 6 feet lower than Denison Street, is going to have any impact whatsoever on exacerbating the conditions on Denison Street. I don't believe it will improve any, but this project being lower and having water shedding into this site is not going to have any negative effect on Denison Street. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Mr. Manuel. I appreciate that. Adrian?
Or me? Would you like to hear from me?
Yes.
Okay. So I want to express that this is a very common single-family home project that the commission sees with fair regularity. The removal of a driveway and the installation of an impervious treatment on the driveway for impervious calculation purposes. I want to add that I appreciate your installation of a trench drain here. I realize it's probably a necessity, but if you wanted to incorporate that into all of your impervious driveway replacements, that would be nice too, where possible. Down here, we are going to need cross sections of the coastal bank, probably some photographs to include as part of the notice of intent application. I don't have any questions about the improvement on the retaining wall or the existing seawall. We see an awful lot of that repointing work. You are going to be placing a Land's End. I would like to see the pad. Ultimately, if you're not able to pin to the seawall because of its condition. I am curious to know if this needs to go to ZBA. I believe it does for the setbacks. That's about it for me. It's really going to be this top of coastal bank cross sections, just so that we can clearly see what's there and what the slope is going to be on the finish. I want to express to the neighborhood that the responsibility of the Conservation Commission is to evaluate a project as to whether or not it rises to the performance standards of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Gloucester Wetlands Ordinance. This is not City Council special permit, and it is not the Zoning Board of Appeals. The concern of the commissioners is to evaluate the project based on the regulatory scope set forth in their jurisdiction. So while we do have some questions still on this project, some of the concerns of the neighbors, like with regards, for example, to the installation of fencing. Fencing is exempt from the interests of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Gloucester Wetlands Ordinance. It's not something that the commission is able to regulate. And the fact that it's on this plan here is really, I think, just an attempt of the applicant to reflect completely what the aspects of the project are going to be. Of course, the entire site is a part or is within land subject to coastal storm flowage. That's very common for this area. I'm sure the entire neighborhood is aware of that. And at this time, the Wetlands Protection Act does not have performance standards for land subject to coastal storm flowage beyond asking the applicant to identify the resource area. So that's all I'm going to say.
Thank you very much. Move on to commissioner comments.
Commissioner comments. Commissioner Charpentier.
Linda, you're muted.
None at this time.
Okay. Commissioner Cook.
Well, you stole all my thunder there because I was going to question about, not having a pad shown where the ramp is going to be. So we definitely need to see a little bit more detail on how the ramp is going to be attached. It is really, really close to the neighbor's property. Exactly how you're going to manage it without having it moving around to be determined. But that said, we should have something from the harbor master saying he doesn't have an issue with it. Same thing with the shellfish warden. We need that. Now, if I look at the bottom of the dock where the ramp is going to attach, that's it. Elevation 2 feet. Now, is the wall itself at 2 feet down there? That's a question. And not at the elevation 7 feet. So I'm assuming that the wall from the stones to the base is actually sloping downward. And I'm just want to make sure that there's no attempt to increase the height of that seawall to match elevation 8. I am a little concerned, as the neighbor stated, with the asphalt berm along the edge of the road. That's clearly just to prevent road runoff from coming into their property. I mean, it's reinforced with the stone wall there. I'd really like to ask the applicant to reconsider that, to address it, but I know that area, and there's issues way beyond what's in here, but those are my only concerns that I had, Bill.
Commissioner Gradwell.
I assume that this wall is not armoring the bank, and Bill's comments about attaching it on here, I would like to express my concern. There's no question that the 4-inch berm is going to stop some of the street water from coming onto this lot. The fact that you're removing the driveway absolutely helps, but you're just moving the problem from one lot to another. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Sargent.
Yeah, I'm quite sorry, but I have another riverfront issue. I believe that Goose Cove is part of the Annisquam River, and therefore riverfront review is applicable, even if for some reason it incomprehensibly is not. And I still believe that the riverfront from the perennial stream that drains what was historically known as Duck Pond, as labeled Davis Pond on the plan, would still be applicable. The neighbors call that the brook. Wondering if there's a Chapter 91 permit for the seawall in the adjacent area, which is probably filled tidelands. And The float location is very close to both property lines. The Army Corps of Engineers recommends the docks not be located any closer than 25 feet from an abutting property line. This prevents interference with the neighbor's riparian and navigational rights should they or a future property owner also want to have a floating dock. It would be problematic for the commission to approve a project that interferes with the abutter's rights without a legal mechanism that provides for such an exception. The applicant should obtain written acceptance from both abutters that this proposed floating dock would not impact their riparian or navigational rights. And finally, all material for the floating dock would need to be non-toxic to the marine environment. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Sherman.
You're muted.
Okay,
You're
you're
muted.
muted.
Sorry about that. I have nothing further than what hasn't already been expressed by other commissioners.
Okay. And Chairwoman Jackson.
I would just like to review the homework, I think, here. We had talked about the attachment of the wall to the ramp. We need further detail on, and any pad that may be involved. Any relief from the Zoning Board of Appeals or other agencies. DEP comments, I'd like a little more detail on. My understanding was they were kind of questioning the location of that extension of the seawall. Is the deck pervious that is being repaired? Are you using any fill anywhere? You're replacing the septic. We do need comments from Harbor Master and Shellfish and DMF. I appreciate you're looking out for the berm and finding out what's going to happen there. We have to find out if it's riverfront. We have to find out about Chapter 91 and setbacks for docks. And your one comment about the driveway being lower, the entrance to the driveway being lower, made me question about the surface of the driveway being pea stone. Is that steeply sloped? And how is that going to work? So you can either respond or you can take them all up and we can go for a continuation.
I need to continue anyway for, the various folks to respond, DMF and then I need to get with DEP as well. So I've been scribbling notes furiously. Hopefully I've got most of your comments and I'd like to continue this. We'll try for 2 weeks. I'm not sure I can swing that, but let's see what we can get done. If you can continue the matter to June 1.
Sure.
And we'll evaluate it from there.
Okay, Linda? You're muted.
Charpentier moves to continue NOI 0282853 at 81 Dennison Street to the commission meeting of June 1st.
And Gradwell seconds.
Adrian, you're muted.
Sorry. Commissioner Charpentier.
Yes.
Commissioner Cook.
Yes.
Commissioner Gradwell.
Yes.
Commissioner Sargent.
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman.
Yes.
And Chairwoman Jackson.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manuel.
Thank you.
And now we'll move back and see if Mr. Bradshaw is available.
Yes, he's with us. Unmute
Excellent.
yourself, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We're delighted.
My computer had a glitch. My iPhone
Okay.
works better, I guess.
Okay, if you could give us your name and address for the record and a brief summary of the project, we'd appreciate it.
Okay, Robert Bruce Bradshaw, 253 East Main Street, Gloucester. I'm submitting a request for determination for my float system. I'm requesting to be able to install 2 pilings at the end of the runway of my float system in deep water here in Smith Cove, we had some really bad, nasty winter storms. Some floats have torn loose, some boats have torn loose. And frankly, I'm getting too old now. I can't run down in the middle of a winter nor'easter with anchors and ropes and stabilize those floats. So I think 2 pilings between the runway, at the end of the runway and the T will stabilize those floats, even though I have 6 helix anchors down, and would just be safety and security for me and my neighbors. So that's my request. It's pretty straightforward. Oh, I have Smith Marine contracted for this, and they do Alexander's and the railways. They're very good, recommended by the harbor master. That's the request. It's pretty straightforward. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much. First, we ask for comments from the audience, and any comments you will answer then, and then we do commissioner comments and questions. So I will open it up for public comment right now. Do we have anyone in the audience who wishes to comment on the project at 253 East Main Street?
Madam Chair, we have 8 panelists, 7 attendees, and no members of the public to comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. Then I will close the public comment period and move on to commissioner comments.
Commissioner comments, Commissioner Charpentier.
None at this time.
Commissioner Cook.
I just want to clarify that really the intent of this is to just put in 2 pilings at the end of the dock. If that's all it is, I have no comment, no other problems.
I'm not sure. I think you got this, but this is where I want to put them, right here at the end of the runway. That's it. I think you can see it in red there. It's in deep water, 8.5 feet at the flood neap tide. And most of the time it's 9 to 16 feet of water. Just 2.
Okay, are they shown on the drawing? Because I'm just struggling. I just can't see them.
No, I
Well, can't find them either.
91 light plan. I didn't got them in there. No, they're on this. I just forgot to do it. If you go down the runway to the end where the runway meets the T, there are 2 4-foot steel angle braces there, and put a piling on each side between the angle brace and the V notch there. And
okay, then I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Commissioner Gradwell.
No further comment now that we know where he's talking about.
Commissioner Sargent.
Yeah, I know why he wants to do this, but these pilings would not be able to be removed seasonally as the Chapter 91 permit is conditioned for the floating dock system. And I believe this should be an NOI by definition, because the pilings would be permanently installed within a resource area and would have a permanent and potentially negative impact on that resource area. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Sherman.
No comments.
Chairwoman Jackson.
No comments. I'd like to hear from you on Mr. Sargent's comments, however.
You know, I will say in the harbor, it is very common for us to do piling installation in deep water and also in the tidelands under an RDA, where there is already a pre-existing ramp and float system. So while this is smaller than most projects, I don't think that it's going to change the nature of the Chapter 91 licensed structure footprint, and therefore it's really stabilizing something that is already in existence.
Okay, thank you. And do you know how they're going to be installed, Mr. Bradshaw?
Yes, I submitted the contract from, I could read it to you. I have the contract here.
Okay, I'm sure I read it then because I did look at this.
The Smith Marine is very good. You know, they do all the work for the railways and Alexander's. And I'm sorry, a gentleman, I believe, Mr. Sargent, I didn't understand that Chapter 91 license that I have is for year-round floats, permanent for 30 years. It doesn't say anything about removal in the winter, or anything like that, and no one here does. So I didn't understand that. I think the license is for year-round. In fact, I know it is. But back to the other thing, Smith Marine guarantees that they will do everything to code and that they will mitigate any spills or anything like, there wouldn't be any spills. There's no fuel or anything involved in this, only on their barge. But the contract, I can read you the contract details if you'd like.
I see it. I'm refreshing myself on it. I read them yesterday and a lot has happened since then. Okay. So thank you. I appreciate that.
I
do see that.
There are my neighbors have pilings, and there are pilings all over the cove. The whole, you know, the side of the cove with the railways and everything on the west side of the cove is pilings.
Okay, and that's fine. Thank you very much. I appreciate your explanation. And I personally am ready to move forward with this. Mr. Sargent, would you object strongly to that?
Not strongly, but yeah, I still think it's precedent setting.
Okay. Okay, well, we have generally approved pilings on existing docks, but okay. Let's move forward, and unless anybody else has comments, we will move to close the public, close the hearing. Linda?
Yes, Charpentier moves to close the hearing for RDA 171729 at 253 Main Street.
Gradwell seconds.
And a roll call. Commissioner Charpentier,
Yes.
Commissioner Cook,
Yes.
Commissioner Gradwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Sargent,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman.
Yes.
Chairwoman Jackson.
Yes. Linda? Rebecca?
Charpentier moves for a negative determination for RDA 1729 at 253 East Main Street.
Gradwell seconds.
And a roll call. Commissioner Charpentier,
Yes.
Commissioner Cook,
Yes.
Commissioner Gradwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Sargent,
No.
Commissioner Sherman,
Yes.
and Chairwoman Jackson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, sir, you are all set.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your patience.
Wasn't
Okay.
your fault.
No. Okay.
On
Let's
my
move. Let's move on to other commission business with extension 0282651 at 21 Bale Lane. Bale Lane Beach Association, represented by Daniel Buonaconti at Foster and Eldridge LLP.
All right, Daniel, I see you in attendees. I'm just going to allow you to talk and ask you to unmute from there. You can talk a little bit about the Bale Lane beach permit and the extension request.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Great. Thank you very much for putting this on the agenda. I'm actually a resident of Bale Lane, so I'm just the representative. Don't let the law firm name fool you. I'm not an environmental lawyer. The application is really straightforward. We have an order of conditions or permit to maintain the access through the dune to the beach at the end of Bale Lane, and we're really just simply looking to renew that or extend it, whatever the proper term is. And the existing order just allows us to maintain the pathway to keep it straight so that we can roll out one of those Moby mats, those permeable removable mats. Ours is only 3 feet wide. It's really tremendous. It really enables us to direct the traffic specifically to this 3-foot area. And it's much safer and enables everybody on the street to be able to get down to the beach, where some of our residents are actually getting more advanced in age. And the ability to walk on one of these things down the dune is terrific. We don't change the height of the dune at all. Our permit only enables us to sort of level it horizontally left to right, so that when we roll the mat out, it doesn't slope down one way, so you're not sort of walking off the side of it. And that's really it.
Okay, thank you very much. We don't have to open this up for public comment, right, Adrian?
No, ma'am. You just have to identify how long you would like your extension to go, 1, 2, or 3 years, Mr. Bunaconti.
Well, then I guess I would ask for 3. That was the original permit.
Okay. Let's go for commissioner comments.
Sure, comments, Commissioner Charpentier,
No comment.
Commissioner Cook,
No comments.
Commissioner Gradwall,
3-year, is that appropriate for this extension?
yeah, it's very typical for the beach access. Commissioner Sargent,
I appreciate you taking care of those older folks. No comment.
Commissioner Sherman,
No comments.
and Chairwoman Jackson.
I'm fine with 3 years, no comments. Okay, then I think we're ready to move forward. Linda, do you want to put forth a motion?
Yes, Charpentier moves to approve a 3-year extension for EXT 0282651 at 21 Bale Lane.
And Gradwell seconds.
Commissioner Charpentier,
Yes.
Commissioner Cook,
Yes.
Commissioner Gradwall,
Yes.
Commissioner Sargent,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman,
Yes.
Chairwoman Jackson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, you're all set, sir.
Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
Yep, night, Dan.
Good night, Bill.
You're around.
It's been a lot of time tonight.
Woo!
We just wanted to make your next to last meeting memorable, Adrian. Okay, unless there is no further discussion on anything, please, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Charpentier moves to adjourn.
Gradwell seconds.
And roll call, Commissioner Charpentier,
Yes.
Commissioner Cook,
No, because if we adjourn, we're gonna lose Adrian. I don't want to adjourn. We're gonna stay here forever.
that's June 1st, don't worry.
Yes.
Commissioner Gradwall,
No.
Commissioner Sargent,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman,
Yes.
and Chairwoman Jackson.
Yes, and you were soundly defeated, Barry. Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Thank
night.
you,
Thank you
everyone.
all. This
That was
was
a
a
good
lot.
Everyone stay safe.
Yes.
Yeah, you too.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.